in the room? After Matthew will be Jason Matlock. Is Matthew here? Is Jason Matlock in the room? Jason, you're up.
Working? Can you hear me? Well, first, I want to thank the board for the discussionary tone that's been going on today. I think this meeting has been leaps and bounds past where we were a couple months ago. And to recognize the ownership that you've been taking for your roles, I really appreciate that. So my name is Jason Matlock. I hold advanced degrees in chemistry, horticulture, a PhD candidate in pest management, conducting active research. And I recognize the need for quality cannabis facilities. And as such, I co-founded a startup company called Grand Cru LLC, which will be seeking production and retail licenses. So I got a little bit of skin in this game. And as I look at it, I realize that the history of cannabis legislation in Michigan is an example of the necessity for precision in legal language. The Facilities Licensing Act is a welcome opportunity to create a transparent system for regulating cannabis in our state. However, there are many key points that require clarification from the board and the Bureau in order to get this industry started smoothly. Starting a business is an involved process. Those of us seeking to operate in the emerging cannabis industry are further challenged by the need to formulate business plans that comply with a rule set that has yet to be fully defined. While many aspects of our industry's regulation can be accepted as being of an evolutionary nature, and we just come to accept that, one area that requires precision and definition now is the rule set governing acceptable capitalization and ownership of licensed businesses. The Act clearly demonstrates that capitalization and ownership interests will be principal criteria for approval of a license. Some restrictions have been made clear. So we know, for example, that applicants with felonies in the last 5 years or a substance-related felony in 10 years, not permitted. Misdemeanors involving controlled substance, theft, dishonesty, fraud in the last 5 years, not permitted. Very clear, very easy things for us to look at and say, okay, I can make decisions about how to structure interests in my company. However, the law also states that an applicant must disclose any charges, indictments, convictions, or arrests for any relevant criminal offense, regardless of whether this has been expunged, charged, or reversed on appeal. It also says that the integrity, moral character, and reputation, personal and business probity, financial ability, and experience and responsibility or means to operate may also be taken into consideration. These rules are very unclear. What do they mean? As a business owner seeking qualified financial investors, I have a hard time discerning what will be or will not be considered an acceptable investor by the board. Furthermore, we know that, quote, the total amount of an applicant's capitalization to operate and maintain the proposed marijuana facility will be considered in the application. However, the method by which sufficient capitalization will be evaluated has not been defined. So how much do I need to run this? What is my opinion and your opinion different? How do we make those decisions and how do I prepare for that? So the ambiguity surrounding permitted ownership interests and adequate capitalization makes fundraising for a cannabis business incredibly difficult. One paragraph left and I'm done. The law governing exchange of securities are in part based on the amount being raised and the number of purchasers. So we need the help of the board and more to define those requirements for operating the business so that we can recruit investors and ensure that we're structured appropriately before taking applications.
Dory Edwards? Can somebody there? Dory Edwards and Matthew Abel.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Dory and I'm a cannabis patient. I use medical cannabis in a tincture form, and it is a strain that is high CBD, low THC, that is not available by my caregiver. I have to get that from a provisioning center. And its national statistics show that there are 50% of medical cannabis users do not use flower. So Mr. Bailey's claim that we can all just smoke, I don't know, 5 grams a day is a little, it's a little off. It's not true. There are many, many caregivers who do not know how to access. They just don't have the strains that their patients need. Also, to process flower into the tinctures and the viable methods of administration, like oils and things like that the other 50% of medical cannabis patients use, the processing equipment alone costs a lot of money, and that I have been really, really happy for the provisioning centers in my area that have provided these capsules and things like that I've been able to find and use. I really would not like you to close them down, because I don't have a lot of faith that this board or Lara will be able to give licenses out soon enough. And if you're asking me to, stock up on enough medicine in the next 2 weeks for me to last me not just till December 15th, but until you guys actually license these facilities and then they open their doors, or the growers actually grow the medicine and then process it and then it gets into the provisioning centers, you're asking me to break the law. You're asking me to get way over the amount that I'm legally allowed to carry at any one time. So I think that I hope that you think this through a little bit more carefully. To me personally, the provisioning centers that I've seen, the owners and operators of these have taken on a great responsibility, a civil and social responsibility to these patients. They know what access is like on the marketplace. They know the kind of lab testing and safe medicine that they are providing, and I think that these people are heroes, and I don't think that they should be kind of condemned or looked down upon, honestly. They're not money-mongering people. These are people who took a risk for the 250,000 patients that are there. So I'd just like your consideration. Thank you.
Allison Ireton will be next.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Abel. I'm the State Director of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws and a lawyer at Cannabis Council. First of all, thank you for the larger room. Thank you for the live streaming, and thank you for holding this additional meeting, all of which we requested at the last meeting. We all appreciate that. We hope you don't wait until October to meet again. There obviously is a lot of content here that needs to be chewed through, if you will. So I just want to point out, there are caregivers who live in places where they cannot grow. Our legislature, in their infinite wisdom, decided that a landlord can put a provision into a lease preventing a tenant from growing in that facility. And so not all caregivers can grow. Some of them are just there to be able to obtain the medicine for the patient from the dispensary and provide it to them. And so closing down the dispensaries is going to hurt a lot of people. This board, or LARA, could enact emergency rules to allow transfers to patients so it would not be a felony. So instead of just saying, well, you guys are committing felonies, why don't we make it so they're not felonies, and so that the patients can get the medicine and the access that they really need. As an alternative, it seems that the state should allow the current dispensaries, which are licensed under local ordinances, to stay open, to go ahead and apply for state licenses, and only if and when there are open facilities which are state licensed, then those which have not obtained licenses should and could be shut down. That would be appropriate. Now, I don't only want to criticize, although this didn't really have to be the day during the eclipse, but But as a suggestion, I've done a lot of thinking when people ask me about the assessment and how much that will be and how it will be determined. And I don't know whether this has occurred to you, but just a thought off the top of my head, everyone is required to provide estimates of their gross revenues. You could add up the gross revenues estimated from the various types of facilities, determine the ratio of those revenues, and then assess the fee based on that expected ratio. So if one of the licensees as a group is expected to raise more revenue, they should share more of the burden of the licenses. Thank you for your time.
Next will be Paul Samways. Is that CPA guy? Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Ireton. I'm also an attorney. I work out of Ann Arbor, and I represent and work with hopeful cannabis business people. So I really do appreciate, Sergeant Bailey, your candor and your honesty about saying that you will, probably cast a no vote on an application for anyone who's currently operating. Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti have many, dispensaries that are currently operating, but, with all due respect, that is one vote on a board of 5, and, I'm not asking for it now, but I would appreciate the same candor, if at all possible, from the rest of the board, so I can better advise my clients on what their decision should be going forward, whether to stay operating as a processor or a dispensary owner. Also, I would appreciate some clarification. I work with some landlords who are leasing facilities to dispensaries, and some people, believe it or not, are looking at getting out of the industry and pursuing other things. If a landlord is leasing to a current operator and then leases to a different operator because they already are in an area like, per se, in Ann Arbor or Ypsilanti that has said this location is an approved dispensary location, can they lease to a different owner who is not a current owner? So I would just like some clarification on that if we could later. The second point I wanted to address is the current operating dispensaries in the sense of the decision with McQueen. So, I think McQueen, as an attorney, it's a legal argument, it's not necessarily a logical argument, but McQueen was based on facts specific to that one dispensary. And after McQueen was decided, they said very specifically that type of patient-to-patient transfer in McQueen was not authorized by the 2008 Medical Marijuana Act. So, going forward, Bill Schuette said in a press release that he would advise townships on how to deal with the decision in McQueen. And what happened is, Bill Schuette issued letters to all the local municipality prosecutors saying that they are authorized, if they choose to shut down dispensaries based on McQueen. Now, we know that people have decided not to do that, that prosecutors in Washtenaw County and in Genesee County have decided to not shut down the dispensaries because they see them as a benefit. And I know that's not a popular opinion for Sergeant Bailey and maybe others on the board, but it's the fact. And to hold other dispensaries accountable to the McQueen decision, you'd actually have to have a trial and say that their type of patient transfer was exactly the same as the type the Supreme Court was talking about in McQueen. And I think because the legislature has stepped up and did step up shortly after McQueen, these dispensaries and the municipalities that tolerate them and support them actually just allowed them to operate knowing that where we are today, was soon coming down the road. That they would be licensed businesses. I mean, we're talking about shutting down businesses that were operating under a color of law until the Supreme Court made a decision. So from 2008 to 2013, it was arguable on all levels of government that they were legal. And then if you take the position that McQueen makes them all illegal, then I see Sergeant Bailey's point. But if not, we're on the 10-yard line about to legalize these businesses, and to shut them all down now and put patients at supreme risk of losing access to their medicine is just foolish. Thank you for your time.
William Kozinski.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Paul Samways, and I'm a CPA and managing partner of Cannabis Accounting Incorporated. We're proud to say that we've helped cannabis businesses in Michigan and other states for the last 7 years, taxes and do accounting. We would be a great resource to help you judge the economic impact and to make sure that we can establish a profitable industry here in Michigan. Because obviously, as you can see from the interest, these folks aren't here just to show up and get educated, they're here to make some money. Okay, and they need to make money, because if they're not making money, they're not going to attract the investment that we need to build out the industry and serve the patients that we have. The issue is they have to pay taxes. That money and that investment needs to be pre-tax before it comes in. So I would recommend the board require at least 2 years of tax returns from the caregiver applicant, either as the applicant or as the employee, to show that their business activity was covered in tax prior to applying for a license. It's only fair. I'm sure you all pay taxes, I pay taxes, the people that clean the restrooms here pay taxes. Just because you're in the cannabis business doesn't mean you're tax exempt. The other thing that's more critical is the reason we're here is that the legislature saw the opportunity to make tax revenue and to get a system in place prior to legalization so that they can tax it effectively. So it's critical that we make people pay their taxes and that we pay our freight as an industry if we're going to be accepted as a mainline industry as everything else in the state. Local municipalities should make checking property taxes, and if they have a city income tax, they should be checking, because I know there are people not doing taxes that have been licensed in Flint, Detroit, and Lansing, or not Lansing because they're licensing, but due to the low compliance rate, we would estimate that no more than 20% of all the existing marijuana businesses in Michigan are paying income tax right now. Michigan Department of Treasury has never audited anybody in this industry. In Colorado, they audit everybody that is a license holder every 3 years. So we need to improve compliance. If they do that and you require taxes, because there's a lot of folks holding off doing previous year taxes, I would estimate a windfall to the state treasury of at least $20 million in the first quarter of the next fiscal year. And that's very, very conservative and very low. The other area that the board needs to look at is source of funds. We want to make sure there's no criminal element taking funding from other Schedule I sales and opening up a medical marijuana business. One way to help reduce the 4,000 applicants I think you're going to get is to require a reviewed financial statement. That would also help with determining source of funds and making sure it's legitimate, and streamline the process for Laura so they don't have to hire outside talent to go ahead and vet financials. I know they're going to hire a lot of enforcement people. I think they're budgeted for 83. You know, you have a licensed class of professionals right here that are charged with providing assurance on financial statements for the government and other entities and stakeholders. CPAs can do the work. And that's it. Thank you very much. If you need any information or any benchmarks or metrics, feel free to get in touch with me. I'll get you a card after the meeting. I think you're going to get it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie, from the Detroit Health Department.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for accommodating this meeting today and allowing me this opportunity to share my comments. I do apologize for reading, however, in groups I'm a little nervous, so bear with me. My name is Bill Kaczynski, and I am the CEO and founder of Tattoo Vape Premium E-Juice, located in Saginaw, Michigan. I am a medical marijuana card holder in good standing in our great state, and I suffer from 4 herniated discs, degenerative disc disease, spinal stenosis. I have had surgery for hip dysplasia and have been recently diagnosed with adult onset of seizure disorder. In other words, I am a qualified patient in our state. In years past, doctors have always told me that I have 2 choices for pain management, pills or surgery. What they didn't tell me was that my body would build up a tolerance to this medication that they were prescribing, and that I would continually have to increase the dose I was taking in order to control my pain. When they informed me that I would have to move from Loratabs to hydrocodone, an opiate equivalent of heroin, I decided that it was time to look into other means of pain management. After weeks of research, I found the chemical compounds of marijuana have been known for centuries to have healing effects on the human body. Moreover, the federal government thought that there was enough merit in marijuana as a medicine that they started their own grow at the University of Mississippi and provided medical marijuana to patients who applied all the way back in 1976, 4 of which are still alive today. It has been over 13 years since I have switched from prescribed medications to medical marijuana. It made such a profound difference in my life that I have been dedicated a large portion of my time to advocacy. Since my time is limited, I would like to address some issues that I believe have not been considered enough with the implementation of this order or this program. The entire goal of the Medical Marijuana Facility Licensing Act, in my humble opinion, is to provide a regulatory framework which will allow safe access to medications for patients. That's it. We are here today to help make this program better for the 250,000 patients and caregivers who reside within our state. Growing marijuana sounds easy on paper. It's weed, right? How hard could it be? Let me shed a little light on this for you. After you spend over $1,000 on grow equipment, soil, nutrients, tools that you will need, you need to order seeds. It takes approximately 2 weeks to obtain the seeds, another week to germinate them, another 5 weeks of what's called vegetative growth, which allows the plant to mature. Then you have to ensure that you have a female plant, as the male plants don't produce the medicine which we need. Once the patient has determined that all of the plants were female, it takes another 6 to 9 weeks in order to flower the plant before you can harvest. Aside from harvesting, you're also going to need to cure the product, which takes an additional 4 weeks. To shorten this up, we're talking about 5 months before you reach your first harvest as a patient. And that's if you do everything right. Okay? When I moved back to the state, I found that it was very difficult for me as a patient to be able to grow my own medication. And of course, it took me a long time to finally get to a point where I was able to produce something I was able to use. It was imperative that I had access to these dispensaries because for 5 months, if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have any medicine at all. I would suffer from chronic seizure disorder as well as a number of other ailments. It is my hope that this board will listen to the people that are trying to enter into their licenses, to listen to the patients who are in need of their medication, and make decisions that are based on the welfare of those individuals. Thank you.
Sterling Stigall will be next. Bonnie?
Hi, my name is Bonnie Zander. I work for Detroit Health Department. We have several facilities in Detroit that have gone through our licensing process. They are following regulations. I've been in them. They should not close because they're doing the right thing. They have patients that need this medication that are relying, and they're trying to open up a legitimate business. They have bills to pay. They have families too. I hope that these facilities can stay open. The others that are not following regulations, that are not being tested, they should shut down. But I think the ones that are complying with us, that are being tested, that are doing the right thing, I think they should remain open. So I hope you consider that.
Fred Siderman? Is Sterling here? Fred, you're up. Fred here. Anthony Brown. Joe Ribel will be next. Go ahead.
I'd like to thank the board for having me here. My name is Tony Brown. First, I came here to question the banking part of the whole situation. But since I've been here, I've heard some kind of disturbing things. I do, like Mr. Bailey said, believe that this should be a level playing field because being a minority, we have been left out of Detroit. We have been left out of the whole system in Detroit. So it should be a level playing field, but at the same time, if you close these dispensaries down, all you're gonna do is put this back 20 years in the black market. So the dispensaries that have gotten licensed by the municipalities should stay open. That's the only way you can do it. There's a lot of them that's not running right, close those down. But the ones that really got their license, because Detroit has one of the most strict application process in America. I just think the lady from the health department just spoke. In Detroit, you have to have your weed tested before you can sell it. The testing facility is called Iron Mountain. You can look up Iron Mountain on the internet and you can see whatever product that dispensary has. And you can see the test results, whether it's got mold, mildew, or whatever. And those dispensaries that went through that should be allowed to stay open. Now the other ones, close them down. Because 2 years ago, the city of Detroit came up with zoning ordinance and told everybody, move into the right areas, which was called green zone property. Nobody wanted to move. All they wanted to do was put in lawsuits and stay next to churches, stay next to parks, stay next to elementary schools, wherever they could stay to create the most income. They didn't think about nothing else. All they thought about income, not paying taxes downtown to the state of Michigan. So those dispensaries need to be closed. We need to start on a level playing field like the city of Detroit is doing now. Let the dispensaries that's in compliance with the zoning, let the dispensaries that's in compliance with the stuff they're supposed to be doing right. Let these dispensaries stay open and close the ones that's not in compliance. Thank you.
Stephanie Rebel here. Dan Crispin. Brandon Christie.
I yield.
Mike Shamrock. Well, this one just gave it to us, so they should be Richard Clement. Barbara Dickinson here.
Yep.
You'll be next. Right.
Yeah, I thought I gave you my card the first time it disappeared. I thought you were dogging me.
Well,
But
it's over
hey,
here.
yeah. My name is Richard Clement, and yeah, it is. My name is Richard Clement, and I live in the city of Detroit, work for the city of Detroit. My boss is the pro tem of the city council. And what I wondered is that civil service job testing out of these positions, you know? We're gonna have drug testing and everything, weed testing. Are we gonna create this as a civil service position, job opportunities and things like that? Testing and growing and all those other things. And being in IT, the only way you're gonna get the picture on the card is you use this company, you know, either you elect me Secretary of State, or we just get the picture from the Secretary of State to cooperate with you guys, put the picture on the card, because right now they're feeding you a line of crap, okay? Take about a half hour to play the file to put the picture on the card. And what the gentleman from Detroit was saying is that local ordinances and the community benefits agreement, because hey, we know you're in the city of Detroit, we know you're here, what are you giving back to the community, you know? And I don't see too many people looking like me in here or whatever, but up there. But still, you know, the thing with the whole marijuana thing, we wanted to give back to the community. You know, that's what it's really about. We want to, like, build rec centers, fix roads and stuff, you know, reinvest the money in the community. That's where the disconnect is, okay? This thing with the new ordinance that we have coming up now is going to be voted on. The religious thing, you know, we work with the churches. There's some places some churches that don't really care, you know. But their thing is that they want the money to come back into the community in some way, shape, and form to improve the quality of life. And by shutting them down immediately, it's just another plot and a plan to say you didn't want the thing in the first place. You'll come up with all these crazy excuses about the pictures, about being too close to an empty park, or being too close to a failing golf course to keep them shut down. And another thing, kids don't vote, but their parents do. They know, and the kids do know what's going on. Other than that, this ordinance has cost the city over $1 million by shutting down buildings, okay? Because if somebody was in there, the people were paying property taxes, they're generating some kind of revenue to the county. But hey, I don't like pot, but I got CVS with a drive-through, you know, and we're gonna lose money. So weed is not going away, weed is here to stay, And anybody, we do have a licensing process in the city of Detroit because we approved at least 5 of them already. And for you to come up and say shut them all down is just a backhanded attempt to promote that prohibitionist game. So what we want to say is inclusion. Let's do a reasonable thing. Let's be reasonable about this. You know, let's get some sense. I mean, it's not 1939, it's 2017. Prohibition's over.
Okay, thank you.
Amen.
John Burnett will be next. John, go ahead.
Hello, my name's Barbara Dickinson, and I'm from Montcalm County, Michigan. And a few years ago, the largest employer in our county went out of business. My husband, who's sitting over there, worked there for 28 years. He was 48 years old at the time and was not eligible for buyout or early retirement. I've been a medical marijuana patient since the program first started. I also have worked with many of the people that are sitting in this room today. I don't think that you guys fully understand that if you put all these laws into play, the people that really need the marijuana are not going to be able to afford it. Okay? The people that want to get high, they should have to buy. The people that are sick shouldn't have to die. Why can't we just love all this hate away? It's a plant, okay? Take the prohibition off, take it off Schedule 1. The voters of Michigan in 2008 decided that it had medicinal benefits. And you guys are holding us all back. Okay? There's all kinds of jobs out there that you don't even have to touch the marijuana to be part of the program. You got to think about registrations. You got to think about all the manufacturing of the equipment used to process the marijuana. There's all kinds of things that you people are not addressing. And one of them is the fact that Bill Schuette, who's an attorney, went over to the health department and got all of our medical records, and he violated everyone's HIPAA rights when he did that. So to get himself out of trouble, he changed it from the Department of Health and Human Welfare to the Congress Department. So he could get away with what he was doing. Thank you for your time.
Sean Kuhn.
Thank you for the time to be here. My name is John Cronick, and my notes say pause for laughter. I'm with Michigan Prevention Association, and my message here today is just to ask you to start slow for safety. We have a lot of fine people here who have expressed a lot of benefits from using the medical marijuana. Let's look at the science. We've got, it's not a benign substance. Whether the THC we're seeing is psychotic episodes, traffic fatalities, poisoning, ED visits by children, go slow. Start slow, be safe with that. Also, even CBD, which is the primary medical component from this research that I've seen, from the people I've talked with, the New England Journal of Medicine pointed out side effects to it. So it's important to know what we're getting into when we do this. And the patient is one picture of this, the individual. The other picture is the community. And we know that every time that something is more available, alcohol, we have limits on alcohol sites, the more that marijuana is available through stores or even through cards, we have data that shows the higher the youth use is. So again, just asking you to go slow with this. Be conservative. Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman. Okay, Sean, go ahead. Sean?
Hello, thanks you for letting me come here and speak. My name is Sean R. Kunoff. I am from Traverse City, Michigan, which is a way bit north of here. I walk into this meeting wanting to be educated on this, and the first thing I hear is Sergeant Bailey talking about closing down all our dispensaries and taking my medicine away. I'm here to speak as a patient. I'm a grandfather. I have 8 grandchildren. I have 3 children of my own. I'm a respected businessman, and I also suffer from migraine headaches. I'm also a recovering alcoholic too, which has nothing to do with this other than what I'm alluding to here. If you shut down these dispensaries, now, I will have nowhere to go and get my medicine. I'll be back to, like this gentleman said back here, I'll be back to looking for somebody to buy a bag from. I am a respected businessman, and I thought, and I was aware that going to dispensaries, because I voted for this in Michigan and was given a license as a medical patient, that was my right to have my medicine. Now, does anybody here, I'm asking, has anybody here ever experienced the cannabis? By the way, I don't call it marijuana, I call it medical cannabis. I don't smoke marijuana, I use cannabis for the illness that I have. Closing down these dispensaries, which took so long for us to get, so that someone like me, that's a legal abiding citizen, can go get my medication. I don't think that's very fair. Correct me if I'm wrong, 69% of the voter population put this in law in Michigan. Am I correct on that?
63.
Thank you. 63%, which I'm aware is over 50%. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are.
Why are we now having a board that's talking about taking my medicine away? And how they're in defiant. I'm like the woman. These people are heroes. They found something that cures migraine headaches for me. Has anybody ever suffered from migraine headaches here?
Yeah.
They are debilitating.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
You see this right here?
I have found a medicine that has changed my life. And the only place I can get it is the dispensary. It's the only place I can get it. Does the state have a place where I can get my medicine? So where am I going to get my medicine now? I would ask that the board would please consider this. This was voted into law by the people of Michigan. Please consider that. Please. That's all I have. Thank you.
Joseph Smith will be on deck.
Hello, my name is Matt Hoffman. Those of you who don't know me, hi. I'll say hi to you all after we're done here. But I'm not going to echo everything that my friends and colleagues have been saying because they've said it more eloquently and more loudly than I have. So I'm going to go on to a new topic, one that I brought up in the first meeting, and that is about jobs. The cannabis industry right now produces more jobs than the coal industry twice over. And that's just in the limited capacity that we have. And all the states aren't medical, all the states aren't recreational. So the potential for revenue for some of these townships is enormous. And so specifically to that, what I'm interested in is because I'm an employer. I have the potential to employ 825 people. I run a staffing agency. What I want to know is what are the employment hiring procedures and the timeline for making determinations for potential employee eligibility. Specifically for background checks, people with felonies and things like that. How are we going to make a determination of who can work in the industry and who can't, and how long is it going to take to make that determination? The next thing is that some of the people that are considered criminals in the industry are people that are in this room that are just people that have used cannabis or grown it and got caught up in this nasty system that we have. Will there be special considerations for people that have charges in the medical marijuana industry? Furthermore, I believe that they are probably the most qualified people to work in the industry because they have the experience. I'm Matt Hoffman. That's where I think my questions are. Provide my phone number and email to you. I'd love to have more of a private dialogue and go over some of the specific questions that I have for the board. Thank you for the time, and I appreciate it.
Jamie Cooper.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Smith. I know everybody's tired and wants to go home. I'm not going to take up a lot of time. I represent Medical Growers Resource. I'm a caregiver. I've been that since 2008. First of all, you guys are all my brothers and sisters, not just as human beings, but as Michiganders and as fellow participants in this industry. All those numbers, we made those numbers. We've made this economic activity, and I really take my hat off to all of you. I see you as my friends and colleagues. So if you don't agree with what I say, just be cool with that, because I do have some different take on some things. 2008 came along. I'm an enterprising guy, and we got a new economic opportunity. The law came into existence because of our votes. The legislature then was charged with their duty. They wrote a law. They wrote the rules on how it was going to be applied. Now, I'm a moderately educated man. My mother's a teacher. She taught me to read when I was 5 years old. And I can still read. I've been reading for 40 years. So all I did was go to the website and read it. That's what I did. I read it. No offense to anyone, but in the law, there are two categories created: caregiver and patient. And Tim and Matt, guys that are warriors in this, I respect. I've spoken to them and many other people trying to figure out how did we evolve into these other places, because dispensary is never, ever mentioned. I'm not a genius. I'm just a guy who can read. I read it. You're either a caregiver or you're a patient. And if you're a caregiver, you can only have 5 patients. That's what the law said. I would have loved to have had a sign and, just raked in someone. I would have loved to do that, but the law wouldn't allow me to do it. So I didn't do it. I didn't have money to buy an attorney. I didn't want to get arrested. I'm college educated. My parents didn't raise me to be a drug dealer. I am a businessman. I can be an entrepreneur. So those were risks I wasn't prepared to take. After hearing these patients and knowing from my patients and the people that I've helped how important this medication is, I see where you're coming from. You are looking at your needs, and I get that. And my recommendation to the board is to find a way to allow the existing dispensaries, because so many people are relying on them, to continue to operate. However, there is a way to allow people like me who have wanted to. I wanted to have a dispensary too, but it was illegal. But I can be incentivized, or I can be rewarded by maybe a point system that allows people who have operated in the framework that we have for the last 8 years, 10 years, maybe they get more points. Not that the current people can't get licenses, they can, but maybe they don't get as many points. Maybe they score higher because they have better financial suitability. They should, because they've been making all the money for the last 10 years. But there are ways that we can do it to make it fair to everyone. And I think it is important that we do recognize that, it should be a process that's fair. But I agree with you guys. It's about the patients. It's about the people who need this for medical reasons. And we are here to make sure that your needs continue to be served. And one other thing, can we get a little bit of more information about some of the fees? A gentleman earlier talked about, trying to get a business plan together. It's difficult when we don't have that information. I've heard some fees that have been tossed about, but nothing concrete. So that would be helpful for me. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Jamie Cooper, and I own a marketing and business consulting company in Grand Haven. And just like a lot of people in this room, I'm asking you, please don't just shut down the dispensaries. I'm a patient myself. You probably wouldn't know that just looking at me, but I have 2/3 of my stomach gone, and I have some serious repercussions that come with that. And cannabis truly helps me. In fact, I didn't realize how much it helped me until I was using it in the recreational market living in Colorado 3 years. And then I came to Michigan and realized, and stopped using and had a lot of problems come back. But then I think about my dad, who died of pancreatic cancer back in March, who pretty much starved to death for 8 whole weeks. And I watched it. I held his hand, and it was horrible to watch. But cannabis was the only thing that made him want to eat. And then I think of my sister, who died in March as well from alcoholism, who asked me multiple times how she could use it to help her get off of alcohol. And so please just consider the patients. I agree with Nurse Kathleen in in dispensaries being held accountable to educate these patients, because there's a lot of people going into dispensaries and thinking smoking joints will help their cancer. It's not effective. And then I also want you to think about, there's a law in Pennsylvania that allows people to purchase, especially mothers of children who use cannabis for pediatric patients, but they are able to go to another state and they are able to get cannabis products, and I'm specifically referring to, there's a product called Canatol RX that is available in a couple of different states, but it's the videos that you see of it stopping seizures within 15 seconds. And when this product is not available for these pediatric patients right now, like, at least give these mothers the opportunity to go to a different state and at least get it so they can use it and stop their child's seizures in 15 seconds. Those videos are compelling. And as a mother of a child that's currently being evaluated for autism and cerebral palsy, this is really important to me now. And then I would love if you considered developing a marketing and advertising work group, because Senator Jones wants to take away one of our very limited abilities to advertise, and I think it can be regulated, not taken away. And you know that there are different regulations, like not allowing pot leaves on a billboard or something like that, that we can implement, instead of taking away one of our only ways to tell people about what we are doing. And that's all I had. Thank you very much. Oh, and guidance for municipalities. I'm being hired often to go present in front of municipalities. And last week I was asked a question by one of the elected officials that, you know, they thought, well, we can't charge a $5,000 fee unless we use that amount of money. And so that there's a lot of questions in the municipalities, and I specialize in online marketing and webinars, and I think this would be a great thing to do. Offer webinars so they have a little bit more, they're not clueless. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. I'll be brief to try to move things along. I came here today to see some action. I want to see can-do attitude, yes we can attitude, let's get things done attitude. I've been sitting here for 4 hours where a lot of important things have been expressed, but we've accomplished absolutely nothing that this board is supposed to accomplish. Like, for real, someone ought to resign today because this is dysfunctional. Now, I also happen to be the executive director of MI Legalize. We're the people who submitted 354,000 signatures, which would have had marijuana legalized this year if we didn't have a kangaroo dysfunctional government in Michigan, which at all levels let the people down. And now I sit here today and I am down and disappointed again because we're slow, we're stalling. You know, in Singapore, where they're rumored to have some of the best business opportunities, you can start a business in like 5 hours. We came here a month ago. We're here again today, and we have no new progress. So, leaving here today, instead of talking about authority this board doesn't have to shut down supposedly illegal businesses, which you can't like give some like grace period to supposed illegal business, which isn't even going to listen to you anyway. I mean, like, this shouldn't be what you're talking about. You should be talking about by October 12th, and I hope when the announcements come, there's a motion made. There should be a motion made that also by October 12th, and I congratulate Mr. LaFontaine for trying to get something done here today. We should also have the draft rules. Laura should come with the draft rules. They should also come with the draft application, which has to be filed 2 months later, which we ought to have a month or so to talk about and debate before your next meeting to make corrections to. Along with those rules, we should have the fees. I've heard everywhere from $20,000 to $3 million per license, and it's all speculation. Oh my God, okay, like someone get up here from Laura or from somewhere and say, hey, our fees right now, we're estimating it's going to cost somewhere between $5,000 and $20,000 per license, or whatever the government can actually charge for a fee. But someone should be working on that, and by the next 30 days, like, something should be done, because in private enterprise or anywhere else, like, you can't go a month without accomplishing anything. And I know we have 5 competent people on the board, and you have the staff to work tomorrow. So, like, someone needs to say today, take authority and say, hey, Laura, you must do this. We want to see this at the next meeting. Then open the next meeting up with, like, hey, here's the progress we've made on the things that we're actually supposed to do. So, yeah, there should be another meeting before October 12th. I think that should be bumped up to the next month. Every 30 days, you ought to be meeting at a minimum in dealing with these things like license stacking and zoning, because many people have said, without knowing those things, people can't make decisions. To echo some of the things said earlier, if those rules need to be made so people can make the investments and the decisions, municipalities need to have this direction, and if there's going to be a lag period in between where people are going to be without medicine, like everyone needs to know that and plan for it. There's a real disservice to the public and the communities when these things aren't known. So I don't say that to you to be negative to you. I just say this to you like that. I hope you exercise your leadership to actually implement the rules and get these things done, because that's what all these people are waiting for. Yeah. They didn't come here to find out that medicine might be done here, in a couple of weeks. So I encourage you to make a motion today on these things. Thank you so much.
Jeffrey, if we could have a contact for you, would be helpful.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing on this card.
You said that to me last time. I filled it in for you.
That's exactly right.
I'm on the list. Thank you.
Ray Gamble's here, not wishing to speak. Just says thank you. I have 3 or 4 cards that no one responded. Brandon Crispy.
I yield my time.
Okay. Dan Chrisman. Actually, I see he does the wishes. Sorry. Mike Shamrock, who also does not wish to speak. Stephanie Ribble, who also doesn't want to speak. And Joe Ribble, who also not wanting to speak. Fred Siderman. And last, Sterling Stegall. That concludes our public comment. Any board members want to say anything?
I have a couple of things. Just to address a few things, quickly, somebody brought up very early on about being a Michigan resident, and that is actually in the law. You have to be a Michigan resident for 2 years to apply for a license. And the same thing about limiting licenses. Somebody wanted to make sure we didn't limit licenses. That's in the law. We're not going to limit licenses to any particular municipality. We don't have that.
Wouldn't the residency clauses only be limited to individuals and not so much corporations and businesses?
I think it's both.
Okay, that's
just individual?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
In regards to the dispensaries that are open now, I don't think in any respect that we should be rewarding people for not following the law as it currently is, and that's what we would be doing. We've heard from a number of activists here today, and these are the same activists that I see on social media promoting recreational abuse of this medical marijuana.
You mean the patients?
You mean the patients?
Hey, Don has the floor.
Business people.
Don?
Yeah, and the display that we saw when the woman stood up a couple hours ago and talked about her son, everyone gets shouted down who has an opposing opinion, and this doesn't seem like the way we should be doing the business.
Just want people to tell the truth.
We can have disagreements, and that's okay. And what I have seen through my 36 years in law enforcement is different than your experience. I'm not going to ignore my experience, nor should you ignore yours. But I also understand in the thought that you listen to what somebody says, but you watch what they do. I think that's important too. And so we hear many comments today, and I sympathize with many of those. But for many of the folks, I watch what they do as well, and it doesn't line up to what they said here today. And that's concerning, and we have to look out for that. And we have to look out for that for the communities and the other people that are exposed to this. And the bottom line is fundamentally unfair to those, and we heard from a couple of them today, that are abiding by the law by not opening. They're doing it the right way, and they shouldn't be penalized, which they will be, if these dispensaries are not closed down.
That doesn't make sense.
That makes no sense.
You'll be voted out.
Okay, Don has the floor. Go ahead.
He's done.
I'm done.
Okay. Anyone else on the board wish to comment on anything? So, okay. Go ahead, David. Pardon me?
I was hoping to get in before Mr. Bailey did, maybe in case you guys wound up. So, listen, you need to understand something, that it's been a long day. I'll tell you that. So I'm just a working guy, right? I have no vested interest in this business. I have no axe to grind. Okay, I've spent my entire adult life in uniform, in service to something greater than myself. I take my responsibility very seriously. The state of Michigan, the legislators wrote this act, okay? And this act spells out certain responsibilities. You've heard me echo some frustration earlier today about communication issues, transparency issues. And I don't know what you guys think I'm taking a swipe at Laura, but the facts are that, like you, I need to know this information, right? Because unlike you, I'm going to be compelled at some point to be making some decisions. And when I make decisions, contrary to what my wife thinks, I like to have this information to make a good decision, if I can. Yes, sir. So, everybody here has got an opinion on one thing or the other, okay? I do not have any bias or malice, no axe to grind. Don't care. I want good information on good public policy, okay? So, while I'm sitting up here, and this is going to have my fingerprints on it, I'm going to assure you that this is going to be done in the best possible way, in the most open way, in the most transparent way. So that's the only way to do it. It's the only reason we're here. It's the only reason I'm here. I get compensated for this. Okay, this is a pain in the keister, frankly. But I do it because it's important. You guys know this is important. Somebody said earlier, this is a significant opportunity in our history to have an opportunity to do something right here. Right. We are going to need your input, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent. You're going to have these meetings with these stakeholders, and I'm going to rely upon them to tell me what they want the rules to look like. Because as I mentioned earlier, I don't know anything about this, right? And that's good news, because I don't have any biases. I don't bring anything to the table. So you are going to tell me what you want those rules to look like, okay? And then that's what I'm going to bring here, consistent with our representative form of government, all right? So we feel the same frustration that you do, right? We've called for additional meetings, right? We've called for additional information to be shared with us. And if you think you're not getting the information, imagine what we're dealing with, right? We're not getting the information. So I share in your frustration. We're going to do the best we can. I know I'm going to do the best I can. It's got my fingerprints on it. I want this to be done the right way. So hang tough, keep up the passion, keep on the government, to be responsive to you. And if you guys bring things here that you want us to consider or to look at, then you should probably bring a copy of it, right? So, I hear a lot of you guys talking very eloquently about different things, but if you got specifics, let's have at it, right? Bring a copy of your presentation, give us some information. If you want the board to consider it, then we got to get that information somehow, right? So, you've heard some discussion today about the website. The state of Michigan has confidence that everything's going to be great. We'll wait and see. But you guys got to do what you do, and I'm going to try to do the best I can do. So just hang with us. We're going to be all right.
Thank you.
David, thank you for that. And I just want to say that I, too, appreciate all of the comments that have been made today. It has been a learning experience for me. The comments that were made at the last meeting and the comments that were made at this meeting. And I think if we all make decisions based on the best interests of the patient, I think we'll all get to where we need to get to. But I think that's the one thing that we should all be looking for. That should be at the top of everybody's mind. For every decision that we make, every recommendation that we make should be what's best for the patient. And I think if we keep that in mind, we'll all do what's right for this, not only the state, but most importantly for the patient. But I appreciate your comments, and many of you individuals that are up here speaking, I don't know you, so I take whatever you say at face value. I don't have any right or wrong because I don't know you, I don't know your background, so I listen and I pay attention and I listen to the comments and the information that you're providing.
At this point, we have a motion that's been tabled. Does anyone wish to address that motion?
I would like to address it. I would ask that the board here consider asking Laura to really provide some additional information. I think we are not prepared, at least I am not prepared. I don't have the information that I believe I need to intelligently make a decision on this today. So I would ask that Laura provide us with a recommendation, and if there's a need for us to vote on October 12th. Because I honestly, as I think about what's best for the patient, I cannot vote today as to what's best for the patient based on what I've heard today. So that I would ask that Laura provide us with a recommendation as to what's best, and that we review, discuss it, and make a decision. Again, we'll keep it in mind what's best for the patient. And I've heard many of you say that shutting them down is not best for the patient. I don't know whether that is or not. There may be.
Please hold your thoughts to the end.
I think we need to listen to, there are other opinions, of course, obviously, outside of this room. So I think we need to hear a recommendation from Laura. That's my recommendation.
I would move on it and move forward and take a vote. To close, we had talked initially about September 5th and then moved it to the 15th. I would move for that. You know, as I mentioned earlier, their caregivers and patients are already reaching out to each other, which is the way it should have been all along. These dispensaries were never legal. It was a caregiver-patient model. They are reaching out to each other now, which is good. And they will land with their caregivers, the patients will. And I would move that we vote on that.
We move it from the table, put it before the board?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion on that. You'll be voting to put it back on the agenda. David?
I'm going to just call upon the distinguished counsel. I'm going to assume you're versed in Robert's rules, and I'm not sure that we can do that right now. I'm not really sure, but so my distinguished colleague here, we discussed and brought up under old business. The motion was tabled. That motion was approved. We've progressed to new business, ABC, public comment, announcements, and we're bringing it up again, and I'm not sure that's proper. So do you know?
We have a motion on the table, we don't have a second on the motion, so currently the issue remains tabled. The board may wish to consider giving the comments today from the public and board members. If you wish to request advice from the AG's office on the issue that the motion pertains to, you may wish to consider that as well. But for now, we have a motion, no second, and so it remains on.
Is there a second? I can support it, I guess. I would, my comment on it is, I agree with Don that the illegal, and I've heard many people speak today to that effect. Now, there are a lot of other things that are going on that are good, and my position has always been what's best for the patient. If we don't do this today, we're going to do it somewhere in the future, because it needs to be done. Because if you're going to have a license and you're not operating legally, therefore it's going to be real hard for anyone to approve a license under that knowledge. That's like, oh, I don't rob a bank, but yet you're still doing it. So, from that perspective, there's been people speak on both sides of this issue very, very prominently. My issue is plain and simple, real plain and simple. I want to see the patients taken care of, like the young lady, Dory Edwards, who's no longer here. How do we take care of that patient? And I would suggest to the board, because I don't think you have the votes done. You probably have 2, and that's all. I think we're going to come back well before October the 12th, probably in mid-September. By then, I would ask that Lara give us that information. I would ask for the information from the Attorney General's office as to, not to the table, I did that, but where we stand on this, because I'm just going to tell you, if it isn't by September 15th, it could be up by October 1st or October 15th. I don't know the date. We're working through that. We're trying to figure that out. And I will tell you, I'm going to vote what I think is best for the patients. And today I don't think that any kind of vote, yay or nay, would be best for the patients. But my gosh, you better think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. Because you can yell at me all you want, because I'm with Dave. I can go back on the farm, just spend my time there and be very happy. Very happy. But we've been put here to get this program started and going. I thank Lara for all the work they've done, the Attorney General's office, everyone. Because contrary to what you may believe and see, to Mr. Hank's question, there is a lot of work going on. But this has to be done right. Or I'm not voting for it. Real simple. So with that, Don, if you would see fit, and we will meet between now and September 15th as a board. And I do expect that input that I just asked for the department. Because I think that's what will be best for the patients. And all you business people out there, glad for what you're doing, but by God, it's the patients first. Any other comment? Okay, I will say one thing. I said it at the last meeting, and I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep saying it and saying it until the congressmen start calling me, and I'm still going to keep saying it. We have no control over how marijuana is legal or not legal. Call your congressman or U.S. senators. They are the ones that make that decision, not us. Not the legislature in Michigan, Congress, in the U.S. Senate, and the President. They're the ones that can remove marijuana as a level 1 narcotic, not us. So make those calls. I sure hope the press puts that in the paper, because that's really what's needed. With that, I would entertain a motion, unless anyone else has something to say, for adjournment. Is there announcements? I was just covering that. Anyone else want to bitch to the congressman? I think y'all should call Senator Booker, by the way. He's the one that looks like he's going to fix this. And nothing else? Motion to adjourn? The order, and we'll have roll call.
Okay. Rick Johnson.
Present.
Donald Bailey.
Present.
Nicole Cooper. Not present. David Fontaine. Vivian Picard. Here. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there any additions, subtractions to the agenda? Oh, yeah, just a second. I'm sorry. Also, I want to remind everyone that there will be public comment, and it'll probably be limited to 3 minutes. We'll put a motion in place of that here shortly. I would like to hear from patients first, so if you're a patient, if you put a comment to that effect on one of these cards, I believe on the tables out front, and turn that in so that when we get to that part of the agenda, we'll be able to listen to public input. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to limit comment to 3 minutes.
So moved.
Move, okay, is there support?
Support.
Support. So it's been moved and supported for public comment, which will be under number 7 on the agenda, to provide 3 minutes of conversation and input from anyone that wishes to address the board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now we'll get to the approval of the agenda. Sorry about that, folks. Any additions? Did anyone have any subtractions of the agenda? Okay, the motion is to approve the agenda. Is there support for that? Support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say. Okay. Approval of the minutes of the last meeting. The minutes have a spelling correction to be made, which they've done, and it's not a person's name. So, other than that, is there any other input on minutes of the meeting for our last meeting? Moved by Ricard, support by Bailey to approve the minutes of the last meeting, and to that, so the public knows, we're looking at, for our next meeting date, would be October 12th. If y'all want to just keep that in mind. That will be announced in appropriate time. All in favor of approving the minutes of the last meeting, June 26th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. And motion carries. Old business. The old business. Commenting on that.
I'd make a motion, we have a further discussion on the dispensaries, in regards to dispensaries that are currently operating in violation of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and how we deal with that going forward under the licensing.
Is that the form of motion, Tom?
Yes.
Is there support? Support. Okay, should we have board discussion? I don't know, Don, if you want to speak to that some more or not?
Sure. Under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, it did not provide for dispensaries in any way. And that was tested a couple of different times, and it was settled finally on February 8th of 2013, where the Supreme Court ruled the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act did not provide for dispensaries. Every dispensary that's out there right now is open in violation of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. The Facilities Act, the board that we're sitting on, is going to provide these licenses for these provisioning centers. Right now, they are not legal. And in order to get a handle on this moving forward, and I think it goes to not just the dispensaries that are operating illegally, but I think it goes to growers who are providing dispensaries, and to processors who are providing concentrates to those dispensaries, that they have to be shut down, and they have to be shut down right now in order for us to go forward in a clean fashion. For those that are getting into the business or anticipate getting into the business, it's a matter of fundamental fairness that everybody starts the race on the start line and nobody has a 40-yard advance. And that's one of the issues. The other issues are that many of the provisions under the Facility Licensing Act are not being addressed in the current dispensaries that will be there for the provisioning centers as we go forward in licensing. So I think, in my mind, that these dispensaries that are currently open, they can't possibly be considered for a license moving forward.
Any other comments? Do you have a date on that, Don? Just talking in general?
Well, if we wanted to, given that some may think that this is new news, when it's really not. The Supreme Court ruled on this February 8th of 2013. For somebody that wants to say they didn't know, it's a 4.5-year-old decision from the Supreme Court. This is very clear. It's been very clear for a very long time. If somebody wants to say, if we wanted to say, the board announced this today, and so where's the fairness in that as of this afternoon, if you're open, you're not going to be eligible for a license. Maybe it would be fair to give a window, and my initial thought is Labor Day. So anybody who is a dispensary currently has until Labor Day to close their door, if they intend to apply for a license under the Facility Licensing Act. Anybody who remains open past then will not get a license from the board. And as we say that, anybody who does stay open has to understand that this is not a license. This is not permission from this board to continue to sell marijuana and the concentrates commercially. We're not giving that permission. It's a felony for every sale that occurs from a dispensary. Every single sale that's not to one of their registered patients is a felony. And if we say we're going to give 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today, to close those doors, that's not permission. That's not license to continue to sell. You can still face legal ramifications. And if someone wants to hold their hand up and say that the board gave us permission, that didn't happen. We're just saying that you're going to have 2 weeks to close before you hit that window where you won't be approved for a license going forward.
Any questions, comments?
I support, obviously, the rationale for what we're trying to do. We may want to think about giving a couple more weeks, at least a couple more weeks, so that individuals, so that the patients can make sure that they receive what they need. And as you indicated, we're not giving anyone. We're not saying that you have the rights or the authority to continue. What we're saying is based on the fact that you are currently serving as a dispensary, that you will not be eligible if you continue after whatever date we decide. But I would suggest that we consider maybe giving a few more weeks, just to make sure that our patients are taken care of.
In thinking about that, there's a couple of important issues with the current caregiver and patient model that we have that's not being impacted by what the Facility Licensing Board does here. As of the 2016 report from LARA, there are slightly more than 218,000 patients. There are 38,107 caregivers. That 38,107 caregivers can adequately supply marijuana to 228,000 patients. We don't have that many. The numbers have probably gone up the both since then. But those caregivers that we currently have in the current MMMA can produce over 250,000 pounds of marijuana every year. That's 35 pounds of marijuana for every patient. I think there's enough marijuana in the system just with those legal growers right now. In monitoring social media, I see that there's a number of caregivers reaching out to patients right now, and patients reaching out to caregivers, trying to align themselves with each other, which is probably a good thing to do. I don't think there's any shortage of marijuana in the system. If you smoke a 1 gram joint every 2 hours, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you need 9.5 pounds of marijuana for the year. And currently, the caregiver system can provide 35 pounds, or 3 times as much marijuana is necessary if you could possibly smoke a 1 gram joint every 2 hours every day. There's enough marijuana in the system to cover everybody right now.
Anything else? So are you putting a date on that?
I would say September 5th. Because the 4th is.
Is that okay with you?
I, again, would like to extend it until the middle of September, and simply not so much as to whether or not the products are available, but to give the patients enough time to get with their caregivers and do what they need to do. I don't think we want to rush our patients. So if it's okay with the board, my recommendation is September 15th.
I can agree to that.
Okay.
But again, that is not a license for anybody.
Exactly.
To continue to operate. If the police come to your door and you're running a dispensary, that's a problem for you.
Exactly.
And we haven't given permission to anybody to do anything.
Would you read your motion and put that in?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to my distinguished colleagues here, I think it's premature to be discussing arbitrary dates for implementation of this act. I would just, there's going to be some discussion here, because I've got some questions that I'm going to ask as it pertains to the implementation of the act here. So I would respectfully request that Mr. Bailey table his motion until there's a discussion here by us and the department.
It's hard for us to hear back here. It's a public meeting. We can't hear you.
I agree. You want to start over?
Yes. Got a louder volume.
All right. How's that? Good? All right. Sorry. So, Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, no respect to my distinguished colleagues here, I would be asking that they table this motion pursuant to some discussion that's going to be had here by us based on some questions that I'm going to ask along the same lines as he's asking. I just feel that it's premature to throw out an arbitrary date without having some discussion with the department. I expect that the department has some idea as to what that framework wants to look like. But I do feel like I think my colleagues do that there needs to be some clarity as it pertains to this issue for us and for these fine folks that are here present. So I'll be asking that you table that motion after we have some additional discussion, if that's okay.
You want that in the form of a motion?
I think my motion to table supersedes his motion.
It does,
So,
right?
yes, that is in the form of a motion.
Is there support for the motion to table it till later in the meeting? Support. Support by Vivian. Motion is to table Board Member Bailey's motion on the issue of the dispensary until later in our meeting, after hearing input from the department and also from other members here. So the motion is to table. All in favor? Well, go ahead and call the vote.
Public members here.
Yes.
Rick Johnson,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
David Lamont, Fontaine, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Vivian Carter.
Yes.
Okay, then the motion is to, you hear me, motion is to table, Member Bailey's motion until later in the, meeting here today. Is there any other old business, that needs to be covered? Dave, you have the floor?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Before I begin, I just want to say, for the interest of transparency and clarity, that Director Regington and her staff has been as accommodating as I think possible as it pertains to answering questions. I guess my frustration is just that the format in which these questions have to be answered, it's like we can't have discussions with each other outside of one person to one person. And I understand the need for that kind of situation. But from somebody who's going to be responsible for implementing this act, I have got some concerns. I know the public has got some concerns as to, the manner in which information is being disseminated. And, the act spells out this board's responsibilities. And just a couple of them is the responsibility to implement the act fully and effectively. And I'm not sure it's being implemented fully and effectively at this juncture. I know there's going to be some discussion later on it. And it talks about consulting with the department, with this board, us, consulting with the department and adopting rules. Mention special rules, emergency rules, oil, I have no idea. So I am concerned. Mr. Chairman, I have two action items that I would like to make a motion that we look for. And we can argue about the dates. But the next meeting is October 12th, which I think is 16 or so business days. You don't check in the math. But in short order, October 12th, I seek, Mr. Chairman, that you direct LARA to develop and report to this body their plans for the transition from the current model to the new one. I would like to see what their plans are, what their thoughts are. So that is in form of a motion, and I'll have one.
Okay. Is there support for Dave's motion?
Support.
Support by Vivian. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Whoops.
Rick Johnson,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
David LaMontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Carter.
Yes.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So in keeping with this thread of transparency, it is my understanding that the very first step in this process, when you're currently doing business, going to be doing business, thinking about doing business, is that there has to be a zoning approval from the local municipality. If I'm not correct in that, I suspect somebody will score me. So it's also my understanding that the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Department has some knowledge of these current operations. So I will be seeking, Mr. Chairman, that LARA, by October 12th, reach out to these municipalities, identify who these people are, bring forward this information to us, whether they're going to be applying for a license, whether they plan on applying for a license, or whether they're not going to be applying for a license. So, the October 12th is just so that we have an opportunity to look at this information. So I'm sure the department has it. I don't know who these folks are. I would like to know who these folks are. So that is my second motion.
Is there support?
Support.
Discussion, I guess from my perspective, who do you want them to reach out to so they know what direction we're giving them?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think that LARA has Mr. Bailey's statistics flesh out, that this information is being reported to them. There's numbers of individuals there. I expect that the cities where these operations are currently being conducted know who these people are. There are dispensaries right now working in these various municipalities. I don't know how many, I don't know where they are, I don't know who they are. But I would like to know. And I want to know if these people that are operating right now intend on applying for a license. And I want Laura to reach out to these municipalities through their city attorneys, township attorneys, county people, and tell us who these people are and what their intentions are. And perhaps this goes to answering some questions that my distinguished colleague may have as to the licensing of those facilities after this act. So I suspect that it will be someone in the structure, like city attorney, county attorney, that's normally how that works. I think Laura can probably figure out who they need to talk to.
Any follow-up?
I don't know if it's that easy, because many of these dispensaries are operating outside of any local ordinance. I don't think that everybody, maybe if they publish this information on the Valera website. And I don't think that there's anybody who wants to get in the business that isn't keeping track of the Valera website to know what decisions are being made. I would think they are. So if we publish that information, if Valera publishes that information on their website, anybody who needs to see it is going to see it, I think.
I guess that my concern is that at some point, these licenses are going to come before this body, and that the first step in that process is they got to pass muster with the local. And if they pass muster with the local, then that should lend some credibility to what they're doing, is my assumption. I could be incorrect. But I at least want to know that Laura knows who these people are. And to your point, sir, if they don't report, then they are acting outside of what we think is going to be the right way to do business.
But we could do it both ways, and that way it's easier, hopefully get more individuals if we do it both of the ways you recommended.
I'm open to any amendments, that's my motion as I read it, so. We have an amendment.
Okay, that's your recommendation.
Sure. Can we add to his motion that it be published to the Valera website?
Just make that as an amendment to the motion.
All right, so an amendment to Mr. Lamontaigne's motion to add the same information and notification to the Valera website.
Except the amendment.
All in favor? Okay, the vote right now is on amendment to the motion. And clerk will call roll.
Rick Johnson,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard. Yes.
Okay, now we have the amended motion before us. Any further discussion on that?
You're fine.
Go ahead and call the roll.
Rick Johnson,
Yes.
Donald Bailey,
Yes.
David Lamontagne,
Yes.
Vivian Picard. Yes.
Motion carried. Okay, is there any other old business? If not, we'll move on to new business. And we'll start with A, department update on the statewide monitoring system. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me? No. Test. There we go. Thank you. Real quickly, just for the edification of the board members related to some of the previous discussion, it's policy can't simply be made by board motions, so I think it's important to consider that the any motions made by the board will have to be considered by the department in consultation with our legal counsel before any policy is adopted. So I think the discussion about the implementation of this new program is a good discussion to have. And we appreciate the feedback from all involved parties who are interested in the rollout of this new licensing program.
I think, Andrew, that's kind of our direction. We want to know, particulars. Board members, have asked the questions. It's nothing against anyone, anywhere. We want to make sure we're getting ready. December 15th is coming pretty darn quick, unfortunately. And, that's just our wanting to get prepared before we actually have these licenses in front of us. We don't want to voting.
Certainly. I just want to make sure that we aren't, we can't legally usurp the entire administrative rules process.
We're not trying to do that.
No, I understand. I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Mr. Briswell, if I could, the idea of transparency is obviously very important. Everybody wants to know what we're thinking. I'd let you know where I'm at. And I think it's important that everybody who is considering getting into business knows that. You know what the board is thinking in regards to the issue that I brought up, the dispensaries. No one can say they didn't know. For me, kind of an end date for me is going to be September 5th. This board is the one who's voting on all the licenses. You deserve, it's a matter of fundamental fairness. Everybody deserves to know, what we're thinking. That's what I think. That's what I feel. So, whether it's a motion we make, it is important for all you folks here that are considering the business. That's where I'm at, and I think to a large degree that's where the board's at. And you need to know that as you decide what you're going to do moving forward.
And I think obviously the opinions of the board members are important to be publicly known, as well as any actions taken by the board and the department. I think for any of the non-attorneys in the room, it's just important that there's an understanding as to when policy has been established. Related to the statewide monitoring system, as I'm sure everyone knows, the Marijuana Tracking Act was part of the legislative package that passed in September 2016, and that law requires that the department establish a statewide monitoring system for tracking, inventory, and verification of medical marijuana. And it coincides with Section 207 of the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, which permits licensees to use a third-party system to integrate to that statewide monitoring system. The department engaged in a selection process to find a vendor who had software available to perform those functions. We did meet with a number of vendors and held a spotlight for any interested parties in December of 2016. The request for proposal was posted on the Buy for Michigan website on January 30th, and bids had to be submitted by last March 2nd. The department selected Franwell Inc. as the vendor and their metric system, which is utilized already as a monitoring system in a number of other jurisdictions. We initiated that contract on May 12th of this year, and the statute requires that the system be implemented within 180 days of the date of that contract finalization. The functionality that's expected from this system includes verification that a registry identification card is valid when any purchase is to be made at a provisioning center. Also requires the retention of certain information such as the date, time, quantity, and price of each transfer. The system also has to be able to make a determination on whether a particular transfer will exceed the permissible limit established under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. The holistic intent of the system, if you will, is effective monitoring of marijuana from seed to sale. One of the critical components of that system is the receipt and integration of information from those third-party systems, which will be available through an API and application programming interface, so that the statewide monitoring system can communicate with any third-party systems that are utilized by licensees. And that's going to track all aspects of transfer, sales, cultivation, processing, and transportation related to licensed facilities under the Act. The department's intention is to continue to enhance communication about the implementation of this program. So specific to the metric system, there is a website at www.metric.com/Michigan, which has Michigan-specific information on it related to the implementation of this system as Michigan's statewide monitoring system. It has frequently asked questions. It has API information, which is in the process of being finalized now. So any interested licensees who intend to use a third-party system to communicate with the statewide monitoring system can have their contracted provider look at that information, get some of the technical specifications that will be necessary. That information will be posted soon. There are also a number of training videos out on Metric's website so that interested parties can begin to learn and understand how to utilize that system if you intend to use it directly. In November of this year, the department intends to engage in what we call the road show. We intend to go to a number of different places throughout the state in order to provide demonstrations of the metric system as well as the licensing process and provide a forum in which interested parties can get more information about the policy decisions and the implementation of the program on a more detailed level in a venue that allows for more collaborative communication. In addition, I always want to harp on the fact that our website is being updated regularly. We are incorporating information as questions are asked and some frequently asked questions. You can also sign up for our email distribution list, which is our primary mechanism of communication at this time. And our website is michigan.gov/medical marijuana. Board members, if you have any questions related to the statewide monitoring system, I'd be happy to take those from you.
Andrew, recognizing that we're, under house arrest here, you mentioned this road show, and Andrew, so you mentioned the road show, and recognizing that the board here is under lockdown, from an educational standpoint. Unlike my colleague here, I don't know that much about this stuff. I take my responsibility here very seriously. I'd like to educate myself. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of opportunities to do so. I understand you guys had a meeting with local law enforcement, and you were invited. I guess it could be helpful if you had members of the board that used to be in law enforcement. I don't know, maybe that'd be helpful. So when you go do these things, I would like to know about them. To know where you're going, what you're doing, what you're saying.
And our intention with the road show was to extend the invitation to board members, but we can't have more than 2 board members at any one of those meetings without making it an official public meeting under the Open Meetings Act. But we will certainly do that. And part of Ms. Curtis's presentation later will talk about the industry work groups, which will also be a part of. So that's dealing with the Open Meetings Act while trying to bring the board up to speed and give you opportunities to learn about the industry and have an understanding of the daily operations of the department, I think is something we're going to focus more on in the next coming months.
My only comment to that is, if it's a group meeting, it's an important meeting, and 2 or 3 of us want to attend, and let's just post a meeting. I mean, that's not a hard thing to do. And then we don't want to violate the Open Meetings Act. So, but we just want to, we've got some important decisions to make, and we'd like to hear it, when it's presented at some of these opportunities. So if we have to post a meeting, that's fine with us.
And also, I believe that if it is a public meeting, it's an open meeting. So it's not as if it's a closed meeting for the board.
Sure. And we'll consider the best way to go about it. I mean, the roadshow meetings should be cookie cutter. So it should be the same thing, just in different places in order to increase accessibility for interested parties. But we'll work with the board to consider the best way to integrate you into that process.
That'd be great. Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, thanks. Next, we have an update on, I'm not sure how to say this, but it's Sarah Hernandez, and the update on, how do you pronounce that word, Sarah? Excella implementation. So you have the microphone. First thing you can do is explain to me what Excella is.
Sure. Sorry. I'm just going to give you a brief overview regarding the licensing system. The state of Michigan is required to begin accepting medical marijuana facility licensing applications beginning December 15th of 2017. The Bureau began development implementation of an IT infrastructure in April of 2017. We're building an IT infrastructure using the Excella platform, which is the developer basically. It's also used in other bureaus within LoRa. The bureau's leveraging existing enterprise solutions utilized by bureaus like Construction Codes, Fire Services, the Bureau of Professional Licensing. We're developing a customer portal and a back-end system for applications, renewals, fee assessments, inspections, audits, investigations, compliance monitoring, and license verifications. The functionality expected in the system, it's a customer portal that moves traditional counter services, basically, where you would go in and pay and do your business at a counter. It's going to take those counter services and move them to a 24-hour self-service type of public access with a variety of services. The back-end system will allow for a streamlined process to keep the licensing process moving through the designed workflow, to have a streamlined process through routing, task lists, and alerts. The system is going to interface with Metric. So once a license is issued, it will update the Metric system to allow for an agency to begin, or for an entity to begin business. The system will facilitate pending applications, create license record associations in the back office. So an entity that has multiple affiliates or associates will be associated in the back office. We'll be able to see that and monitor it. The system will allow for analytics and reporting. It opens the line of communication with municipalities. Once they open an account, they can send and receive information and upload copies of documentation that they have developed. They can send them to us electronically. The system will facilitate the process of renewals once the year is up, after licenses are issued, and the system will allow for scheduling and assignment of audits and inspections. So we anticipate having an operational system by the launch date of December 15th. You can visit the website for updates. There will be some information there regarding the system itself. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be free to, more than happy to answer any questions about the licensing system. Yes.
Regarding the point of sale tracking, how responsive is that in the system? For instance, if I come to a dispensary, provisioning center, and I make a purchase, it goes into Excella.
It goes into Metric.
It goes into Metric.
Right.
And
then Metric interfaces with Excella. Okay. So Excella is the back office system that will interact with applicants and license holders. That's the public-facing portion of it. And then the associated portion with Metric is after you become licensed. That's the system that you have to use.
And that's where the quantities of sales to a particular patient is going to be tracked.
In Metric.
In Metric.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
In terms of charges, will individuals have access, or are there any additional charges other than the licensing fee for the use of that system or the connections of that system?
No.
It's all included in the
Yes.
licensing fee?
Let's make it clear to the people that are here watching and at home. This does not implement that until December 15th, correct?
Correct.
Okay, this will be for applications for particular licenses that will kick off on December 15th. And then that would bring the stuff into the department if they so choose to do it online.
Electronically, correct. You create an account, you can submit the application electronically. It creates a record in the back office, and it makes it eligible for review, for staff review.
Okay, so what would be the first, would that be December 15th at midnight, or would that be, what would be the, because I'm sure people are going to ask that question.
Right.
When would they be able to apply electronically on this site? December,
That decision has not been made just yet.
not before December 15th, though, correct?
No, correct.
Any other questions of Sarah? Oh, Dave?
Thank you.
Hold on a second.
4 questions.
No problem.
I'm wound up today, sorry.
No problem.
Sarah, you mentioned in your report there the municipalities.
Right.
Talk about that a little bit more. I just got the one piece of it. What do you mean?
Sure. This is, the presentation is not about the data that will be housed in the repository, right? It's the method for how we'll be able to communicate with the municipalities and applicants and license holders. They'll be able to create an account just like everyone else and be able to communicate with us via the public-facing portal and be able to upload documents if they choose to.
All right, so this is going to be the only way for folks to apply for a license?
No, they can do it on paper as well.
All right, so old school folks can do it on paper, mail it in. Is there an option anywhere along the line of being able to speak to a human? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, no disrespect intended to other of the state's online functions. But so essentially, December 15th, this thing is going live and everybody's very excited about this, is going to be applying. Is there confidence that this will withstand the deluge of applicants?
Yes. There it is.
All right, somebody ought to write that down.
It is on our radar to definitely take into consideration the volume of applications.
I'll take it one further then. So when somebody applies, let's just say there's 500, I don't know what it'll be. So then we will have 500 responses back telling them that their application is on file.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? That's it?
All right, thanks very much, Sarah. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, down to C, and probably which everyone's waiting for is conversation on administrative rules and the facility work groups. Colleen?
Good afternoon, members of the board, and those attending and watching today's meeting.
Please speak in the microphone.
I'm Colleen Curtis. I work for the Department on Legal and Policy Issues for Marijuana Regulation. The purpose of this presentation is to give an overview on administrative rules, including an update on where the department is currently at in the rule process, and to announce the creation of work groups. The Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act provides that the department shall consult with the board to promulgate rules and emergency rules as necessary to implement, administer, and enforce this act. To that end, the department is working diligently to examine the statute to determine what is needed in rules to implement this new licensing program. For instance, the department has been gathering information, looking at rules from other states, such as Colorado, meeting with industry experts, interested persons, and consulting with other Michigan departments that are named in the statute. The Act provides that rules are required to ensure the safety, security, and integrity of the operation of marijuana facilities. And the rules shall include some of the following. Create standards for medical marijuana facilities. Establish minimum levels of insurance. Create operating regulations. Set qualifications. Create testing standards and procedures. Provide for the collection of fines for a violation. Prescribe the use of a statewide monitoring system to track all marijuana transfers. Quality standards, chain of custody, waste disposal, chemical storage, safe transportation, labeling and packaging standards, daily purchasing limits, marketing and advertising restrictions, maximum THC levels for marijuana-infused products, and health standards to ensure the safe preparation of food or products that are intended for human consumption. What are rules? The Administrative Procedures Act is a separate act. It governs how a rule becomes a law. In order for a rule to become effective, it goes through a process that is required, and the APA governs the rulemaking process. The rulemaking process has several steps that can take a year or more to complete. For instance, the permanent rulemaking process starts off with the request for rulemaking. Then there's a draft rule, a regulatory impact statement, a public hearing where persons can attend the hearings and give testimony and comment on the rules. The rules then go to the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, which is a legislative committee where they are reviewed for a set amount of time. After that, the rule can be filed. I would like to announce that the department has started this first step in the process for the permanent rulemaking process. Requests for rulemaking documents have been submitted to the Office of Regulatory Reinvention. This office oversees the rulemaking process for each department in the state of Michigan, and this office has approved 2 requests for rulemaking. One for the medical marijuana facilities, the other one for marijuana tracking. As opposed to permanent rules, emergency rules are a different process under the APA. It's more of a fast track, and it would be a skinny type of rule set. The process for an emergency rule is as follows. Emergency rules are drafted and the governor concurs. They're filed with the Secretary of State and published in the Michigan Register. They're effective for 6 months and can be extended once. While emergency rules are in place, the agency goes through the APA permanent rulemaking process. So they both can occur at the same time. Input. It is helpful for the department to get feedback and information as it works diligently to implement this new licensing act. For example, prior to the board appointments, Director Edgerton previously sent out questionnaires on certain regulatory topics to persons who had expressed an interest in how the department was implementing the new program. Now, to get more feedback from interested persons, and while waiting for the advisory panel appointments, I'm here to announce the creation of work groups to get feedback on regulatory topics. The work groups are to gather information only on regulatory issues because this is at the early stage of the rulemaking. The purpose of the work groups is to get feedback. It's not meant to interfere with the APA rulemaking process that I just mentioned or the rulemaking authority. There will be 5 work groups created. The work groups will discuss facility standards, and they are in no particular order. Grower, processor, safety compliance facility, provisioning center, and secure transport. These will be the 5 work groups. The details on how to sign up for these. The department will post a notice after today's meeting on its website, michigan.gov/medical marijuana. The notice will be available, and it's based on the Colorado model. Colorado uses a similar notice for their workers. How to participate. If interested in signing up, you will send an email with the following information. Number 1, which of the 5 work groups would you like to participate in? 2, contact information, including email address and phone number. 3, your interest, occupation, or organization. 4, a brief explanation of no more than 150 words detailing your qualifications. The Bureau will consider all email applications that meet these requirements and any additional relevant information when establishing the work groups. The deadline to email your request to participate in a work group is fast approaching. The deadline is Tuesday, September 5th by 9 a.m. The selections for the work groups and the public announcements will be made Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. In conclusion, the department has started the permanent rulemaking process by submitting the request for rulemaking documents. The draft rules have not been started. There are no drafts available. The permanent rulemaking process will include public hearings where persons will have a chance to give testimony and comment on the rules. In the meantime, to get input and feedback, the department will be facilitating the work groups. Even if a person does not participate in the work groups, they can still be involved in the permanent rulemaking process through the public hearing comment period. This will be going on at the same time as the work groups will be working on the permanent rules. At this juncture, a timeline estimation of when the permanent rules will be in place is unknown. Like I mentioned before, it can take a year or more. Consequently, it is likely that emergency rules will be considered in order to protect the public health and safety and provide guidance in the application process. Like I said, the permanent rule process will be started and will be working alongside the emergency rules if they are decided that they will be filed. Thank you. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them or get back to you with the answer.
Questions?
Kelly, you talked about the difference between emergency rules, and there was another term you used.
Permanent rules.
Permanent rules. So the emergency rules are done by who? The department?
Yes.
Sent to the governor? At some point, do we see those?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
At which point?
When they are close to being finalized, they'll be reviewed by several parties, like the Attorney General's office, department, legal staff, and then you will also be able to see them.
Okay, so then, and I think I talked to Andy about this before, but so there's been no work done. I'm not gonna say, there's been, these emergency rules have not been drafted?
We're in the process of drafting them.
Okay.
But-
So it's not like there was a bunch of work going on behind closed doors that weren't necessarily work. You guys are just getting started.
Right, that's correct.
And then the work groups will be there to discuss like the real rules. That's all.
Yes, the permanent rules.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And any other member have a question? Do we, or is it okay if I announce who the board member that will work with each group? I guess I'm gonna do it anyway.
Okay.
The answer, so I just shoot it up. Well, from the grower end, that's gonna be Vivian Picard. The processor will be myself. The safety compliance facility group will be Nicole Coper. The provisioning center will be Don Bailey. And the secure transporter will be Dave, I apologize, I always put your name on. LaMontagne, is that right? I learned something here, right? Any other questions about any of that? I would encourage members of the public, if you're gonna, want opportunity for input, that will be a very good place to do it.
Where you submit.
You would send an email to the department. It will be posted on the department website after this meeting with information. You can also call the department and ask them if you have questions about it, but it should be posted on the internet.
What's the link again? What's the email?
The email will be included in the notice. The link is michigan.gov/medical marijuana, spelled with an H, all one word.
Then we will respond back. Is that correct, to everybody that sends in, I guess for lack of a better, an application, resume, whatever we want to call it, to serve on the particular groups, which the groups may not all be the same size either.
Correct.
I mean, like the grower may be bigger than the safety compliance, for example. Okay. All right. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, that, and Colleen, the meetings dates will be pushed out then well in advance of the,
Yes.
of the work groups. Great, thanks. Public comment. I don't know how many cards here, probably. Jimmy? Well, some of these aren't, when you guys write your names, sometimes you sign like doctors. Maybe you are doctors, I don't know. So if I slaughter your name, I'm apologizing right now for any of them that I do. The first one, and I tried to sort these out, we'd really like to hear from patients first, and I may miss some because I'm not real sure some of these titles that you all have put here representing someone. So the first one I have is Mike, W-I-L-E-R-N. Are you here?
No, Mike Wiley here.
Yeah, Mike, is that how you say it? Wiley? Maybe that's a Y, I'm sorry. And you have up to 3 minutes, Mike, or less. Use the microphone someplace.
Name is Mike Wiley, like the Wiley Coyote. My name is Michael Wiley, and several years ago I was involved in a vehicle accident. Did a lot of damage to my right arm and right shoulder. I've never smoked a joint in my life. I've never had THC, but I do rely on some of the CBDs and stuff like that. And they're talking about licensing starting December 15th. I think that's unfair to a lot of people because it takes them 6 months to start growing. Once they get this license in December 15th, what's going to happen? How are patients going to really need it, or how are they going to get it when everybody's out of business? Furthermore, you guys, I suspect, are government officials or state officials, or you're elected. If you guys dropped the ball and didn't address a dispensary, I think you're punishing everybody in this room. And I take a vote. I mean, how many people feel because somebody failed to do their job? I think you're terribly affecting everybody's life and future here. And I'm not a grower. I tried to grow. I spent thousands of dollars for my 12 plants, and I found out there's mites, and I got destroyed. I spent thousands of dollars for nothing, so I learned an expensive lesson. But I think if you go bust this guy's facility, and there might be jail time or criminal charges, I think this is wrong because the state or you dropped the ball. And I think this needs to be addressed because it's going to affect everybody in this room and the people that couldn't make this room. Thank you.
Okay, Sue Doff is a patient from Traverse City. I say your name, it's N-O-L-F-F.
Okay. I have to ask, all right. I don't appreciate you guys saying that that you're going to shut down the current patients, the suppliers or patients, just like Mike, because like myself, I have no caregiver. I depend on those concentrates. And that's the only place I can get them right now because you dropped the ball and didn't license people back then. What am I supposed to do during that time? Am I supposed to go back on the black market and get what I need? I don't even smoke flower. I can't get those concentrates without the people selling them now. What are we supposed to do? I have another question. We're hearing rumors out there that you might be limiting the number of facilities. I don't know any truth to that. I'm asking. At this point, does anybody know how many facilities are you going to allow? Some states say, 8 facilities. Okay, what if it goes legal in 2018? Then there's going to be a huge shortage if you do any limiting. I think that needs to be considered and planned for when you're looking at those numbers. Are you going to do any limiting by residency? Do the people getting those licenses need to live in the county that they're getting it in? There should be limits on that. We don't want people coming from other states coming into Michigan and getting rich off of this. This is for the people here in Michigan. Please consider the patients first when you are talking about shutting places down. And consider the people of Michigan when you are looking at licensing. That's all.
Matthew Yascolt. Are you here? From Taylor.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for your time. Matthew Yascolt, Taylor Substance Abuse Prevention Task Force and Michigan Prevention Association. I want to address 2 things today. One, we thought we had no dispensaries in Taylor, Michigan, and it turns out we do have a dispensary that is delivery only, and we wanted to present that to the board and see if there's a way that the board plans to regulate delivery only dispensaries. Also, could I present these? Some bulletin boards came up in our communities, and I did see when Colleen Curtis spoke about marketing and advertising restrictions that billboards will be regulated, or that's an initiative. I am not an attorney. I'm a preventionist. I have a team that goes into schools and works with kids, and kids' perspectives are changing. So I ask that you review Michigan legislature. I know advertising of tobacco products on billboards is illegal on highways, so I ask that that's reviewed as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to change our, to move this along a little easier. Suzanne Elms Barclay will be next, and Philip Ferrari, if you'd want to come up and be second in line. Just to make it a little easier. Okay, Phil. Okay. And then Mark Gibson will take Phil's position.
Who? Testing 1, 2. Okay. Hi, my name is Phil Ferrari. I'm a patient, and I actually have a company called Canonymous Labs. We breed our own seed. And so I'm interested in the business aspect of we're going to make a license. And the only thing I ask is that, so I have children. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I have not wanted to risk my children and my children's future and my wife to open up illegally currently. So we've stayed very mellow with this. We've been waiting for licensing. And I ask that you consider not giving special treatment to people who had the guts and maybe the lawyers and the money to open up before licensing happened, and not give them some sort of special treatment for doing something that was completely illegal under the law, given that 4 years ago or 3 years ago they already ruled on this. So myself and my friend, my partner who I represent, hope that we could get an honest, fair shake to get into the market and apply for a license without having someone get special treatment for having the money or the guts or whatever to do it. So it's my personal opinion.
Suzanne and Mark Gibson will be next. Mark Gibson.
I've heard there's a word called organized. I don't know what it means.
We'll be patient with this.
Especially because of the reason I'm here. I'm here because my son committed suicide after a psychosis that was induced 1 month after withdrawal from marijuana. Don't you friggin' No, come on.
No comment.
My son didn't even reach 30 years old, and he was smarter than all of you put together. But he lied to get it. He lied to get a card, and we need to rein in the problem now and understand it. The Michigan law, that was really mean of you guys. What would you think if your son slit his throat? Please don't do that again. It's hard enough. I have here printed out, and then I also have some thumb drives of the 2017 National Academy of Sciences report that came out 1 month and 5 days before my son died. You have a state law that references the 1999 copy of that. I have printed one out here. I have given these. This needs to be looked at. Nobody can just say this is fine. David said he had epilepsy. He called some chiropractor and he said he had epilepsy, which he didn't have. This report shows that there's no conclusive evidence that there is help from it. I just want you to look at the science. I don't want another family. I didn't even know any of this stuff until 2 months after he died. And I'm finding things about these psychosis and about schizophrenia. I have his note in here that he wrote, and he sent it to his brother and said, "Don't tell Mom." And he spelled things. And, you know, please, people, I've been verbally assaulted. We have a problem in Lansing, and that our mayor has never enforced one time the marijuana ordinance that's in place. I have marijuana that I found under my son's bed. I'd love to have it tested and see if none of the marijuana they're giving out in Lansing or selling in Lansing has been tested. Please, I have a copy of the study. I have a copy of things I've said before the city council. I have copies of, everybody talking about, those billboards. They cost $5,000. And here's the thing about legalizing marijuana in Colorado, but they don't tell you about the relationship of suicide. Please look at this stuff. And please, if you, like I said, I'm falling apart, and I'm not very organized. But I'm an engineer, and what I did was research and due diligence, and this is so scary. I went to a suicide survivors group, and there were 4 families there that had young men under the age of 33, all of whom committed suicide. And I asked them, and all 4 of them abused pot. Just make sure it's safe, that it's used for the right reasons. It's not the marijuana that was smoked in the 70s and we, ate everything in the house and went to sleep. There are so many studies, especially since the legalization of marijuana, and your state law is not correct because it's the 1999 one, and this one says why it isn't correct. So please, please contact me if you need anything else.
We will. We appreciate it.
My son's obituary is in here too.
And Suzanne, we will read through that.
That's right. Thank you for not laughing. My only thing, I don't want money, I don't want anything. I just don't want any other family to innocently send their son away, not knowing he's been vaping pot, not knowing there's a psychosis that can come 1 month later, and he writes this horrible note, which they're going to have, and says, "Don't tell Mom." And he was dying all by himself. I never knew any of that. I don't want anybody else to lose their children, because it isn't. Right.
Okay, thank you. Mark Gibson. The next will be Zahara Abbas.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? So my name is Mark Gibson. I am a medical marijuana patient, and also by trade I am a crime researcher, and I'm currently a PhD student at Michigan State in criminology. I don't mind it.
We have quite a stack of cards to get through.
Excellent. I'll be quick. In my work, I often advise governments. I work primarily internationally. I've worked on issues from human rights violations to war crimes to municipal corruption, and even just commercial fisheries regulation. So this is a rare opportunity for me to be able to give some professional advice, also as someone who cares deeply about it. A little bit about me: I have a degenerative bone disorder. So as healthy as I look, this is the product of about an hour of PT most days. I've managed this since my early 20s. Discovering medical marijuana was a game changer for me. It still is. I would like to let the board know that as someone who relies on dispensaries for access, I had never heard of this sunset. Dispensaries are not communicating this to their patients. Until I reached out to MI Legalize a couple weeks ago to possibly volunteer, I was not aware of this. So I would caution the board before making any rash decisions to ensure that medical marijuana patients are aware. Secondly, I would also ask that you consider the financial costs, that if you implement this in September and then you have licensing in December, if people rely on dispensaries and they will no longer have that access, you're asking them to make a significant financial investment in order to maintain their medical treatment. I think that's unfair. I find that also very interesting. As Chairman Bailey, I really appreciate your opening remarks, noting that fairness is a really important criteria in your decision making, and also that this is a discretionary decision. So I ask, in fairness, not talking about the businesses, but the patients, and ensuring that they have continuous access. It's not right to ask someone who's been a medical patient for years to all of a sudden complicate their lives so much that they may not be able to get effective treatment. Thank you.
Amos Maborg, M-B-O-R-G, will be next. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a medical cannabis patient, and I use it to treat my epilepsy because
nothing else worked, even brain surgery for it, and I was still having seizures daily. So with you guys suggesting that closing the dispensaries down, what is going to happen to us, the ones who rely on it? That is very unfair. We can't get enough from now till you guys decide to start opening them again. So what will happen then?
Amos? Okay. Next will be Kirk Reed.
I'd like to approach the board to show a picture of my daughter. Can I?
Sure.
I just showed you a picture of my 6-year-old daughter who has now been 1 year seizure-free after trying cannabis.
That's a great thing. Please hold the applause to the end.
On June 28th, a day after her birthday, 2016, we started her on cannabis. I had my medical marijuana card in one hand and hope in God in another hand that this would be the solution to my daughter's problems. When she was 3 years old, she started having seizures, and in September of 2015, we could not find any control. She always had seizures in the middle of the night, and we could not sleep. And so we took her to the hospital every time she had a seizure because it was life-threatening. She had such bad seizures that she would stop breathing for a long time, and they had to take her to the ICU several times. And so we worked with the neurologist at the DMC Hospital, Children's Hospital of Michigan. We tried 10 plus medications. She was hospitalized 20 times, and we were losing hope. I'm an engineer, so I do a lot of research. I work for GM. I meticulously study. I meticulously look for the right solutions to solve problems. And so we started our journey. We looked at this medical marijuana program. We tried it, and my daughter when she was taking the medication, the pharmaceutical medications, she would lose her balance. She couldn't talk sometimes. She wouldn't be able to focus. And as we started her on high CBD oil, instantaneously we saw a change. Now my daughter is 6 years old. We celebrated 1 year seizure-free party, and Zara was actually there on Saturday. We had about 100 people celebrating and eating a cake with a picture of a leaf on there. It wasn't actually infused, but we enjoyed it. We celebrated that my daughter has beaten the odds, and she has survived thanks to cannabis. And so my question, we rely currently on the dispensaries to provide the medication we need for her, and if this emergency law goes into place, we will not have access to that. We've tried growing it, but we may not be as successful as others who are more professionalized. So we appreciate if that process was stalled for a little while while we figure out what to do next. Thank you.
Kirk Reed is next, and then David from Mom and Dad Holding.
Hello, my name is Kirk Reed. I'm a patient with multiple sclerosis. I'm legally blind. I don't look like there's anything wrong with me, but I got more scars on me than you can count. I'd like you to know as I stare at you up here, I can't even see your faces. That's how blind I am. I did hear someone earlier on the board said that they weren't educated. I'd like to know how many of you have actually seen marijuana nuggets in your hand. Could you raise your hand if you have? How many of you?
Not in my hand, no.
I just wanted to know if you've actually seen the plant itself.
Yes, I have.
Have any of you seen concentrates?
Yes, I have.
Nice. Have you seen edibles?
Yes, I have.
Thank you for getting into that. And I'd like to tell you folks, if there's any way that I could help educate you afterwards, I would be more than lovely to spend my time 5 hours educating you on the things I know about the cannabinoid system and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
The things that I would like to talk about, let me tell you what happens, Mr. Bailey, if you close those dispensaries right now. Folks like myself will probably be back in parking lots at Walmart or the high school parking lots buying our medicine, because that's where it came from. Those numbers that you gave about that medication, that doesn't mean that that's good quality medication, like the pills that are out there on the market. Susan, I'm sorry about your son, but I have lost many friends to opiates, and God bless them. And again, Susan, my heart goes out to you. But folks, please listen, this isn't the things that are going to happen for dispensaries. You're already sitting up there going eventually in December, well, we're going to regulate these things, we're going to go for it. Right now you're telling me that's not okay. That's not acceptable to me as a patient who fought for this law, got that law passed, and I've heard you speak up there about these facilities are not for us to go. Let me tell you something, if you have a caregiver and a caregiver has a heart attack and he grows your plants, where are you supposed to go for your medication? Do I lay at home and suffer? Do I go into another multiple sclerosis attack, knocking up the numbers for the medical system? Is that what you want? That's not what I want. I want to be able to go get good, affordable medication. And as far as testing facilities goes, that medication should be tested. I'm all for that, folks, and maybe that's something you should find out more about. But those numbers that you were giving out on that high dollar amounts of medical marijuana available to us is not correct, because like those pills, certain things and certain strains do not work for certain people, just like in pills. So all those numbers that you were giving out there on those high numbers of marijuana available to us patients is wrong, because not all of that means good. It doesn't mean that it's good medication. The gentleman came up here before and said, hey, I grew, and this is adding to your numbers, but that was not good medication he gave out because it had spider mites, mold, mildew, whatever it may be. So please, I beg of you, before you start shutting things down and turning people like me off, I don't want to go back to a Walmart parking lot and wait 3 hours for a dealer to show up. I don't want to have to go to a high school and buy a bag of weed. I need to go to where there's a dispensary, and people are laughing, but this is serious. This is serious to me as a patient, someone who cares. I have dealt and watched people die in my hands with cancer. I have seen this plant cure testicular cancer. I have done things that none of you on the board would even give me a chance, because you look at me like maybe I'm some kind of loser because I don't wear a suit. Well, let me tell you, those things are wrong. And please, don't look down on my community because we're not dressed in suits or we don't have the education you have. Some of us are even more educated than you folks. But I beg of you, please, if there's any wisdom in you folks and you need education, call on a patient like myself. If you're going to go do these road shows and everything, take someone like me. It doesn't have to be, pick anyone out here, but take someone like us that can actually show you how this is helping us. Show you what a concentrate is doing. Now, please, I beg of you. Thank you for your time.
David?
Can I speak louder? Everybody can hear me? No. Now,
Yep.
how many people here is not Michiganian? Please raise your hands. That's it. That's it. They not belong here. You know that, right? Yeah, it's belong to us, the Michiganians. I got two questions to the board. First question. Can municipality pick up the license for commercial growing? Is that one understood?
What was the question again?
Question. Can city be a grower?
City, no.
Where? Okay, let's another question. How many people here from municipalities? Anybody government workers? Please raise your hands. Yeah. Two. We're gonna have to talk. Okay, good. Because, see guys, you are wondering, but the government itself not ready yet. Don't press it from the government. This is historical moment. Prohibition ends, you know that. 2008, when I become a patient, my name is David Kurlanchik. I live in Michigan here, and I'm a patient too. So what I have to say that we have to work all together. Because, and one thing, it was a lot of anger, it was a lot of, we have to take that away. We have to, because, marijuana, it's a product which is bring peace and safe for cancer, a lot of things it does, miracle. So, board, second question. Can municipality be controller, which is test how the marijuana grow by private persons? Can they do transportation? I understand that. So next time we're going to be on the board, I would like to have that answers.
We will get that answer to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, board. Thank you, everybody.
Eric Browns and David Scott contact. If I read this right, you're one of you. Eric, you're an elected official. True.
Hello, my name is Eric Reynolds, and I'm an elected official of my local township. I'll try not to go easy on you folks. From what I'm hearing and gathering so far, number one, definitely cutting off safe access at an early time prior to December 15th, I think is a very bad idea. It's just like you've heard testimony already, patients need their access. I know many people in my community that have safe access. My community has been one of the holdout communities, remaining neutral or at least accepting these in some way, shape, or form. We've been, telling these people for a long time that when the day comes to regulate this type of industry, that we would look into it. And we would look into it with a permissive agenda. But given the fact that from what I'm hearing today and from what I heard last time, and I know there's a couple of people that spoke last time that at this committee that were raided and went to trial and got charges and they're going to jail or prison time. I just don't think this is the time to turn on the state police and come attack the community. I certainly hope that. And I certainly hope that, as one of the speakers today, and I hope no one else here today that comes to address this board, gets raided or targeted because we decided to exercise our First Amendment right. This is also about constitutionality, and as you know, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act was a voter referendum, and voter referendums are not legislation written into effect by a legislature or a local municipality. A ballot proposal, especially in the state, is directly connected to our Constitution. It's the right of the people to have the opportunity to change a law or their government in any way they see fit. And I think it's ubiquitous throughout our Constitution, the right of the people to be able to do that. So I would look for guidance from this board to the communities, to the municipalities. We're kind of getting overrun or bombarded right now with people that want to come into this, but yet you need to kind of give us. We need clarity. Is what I'm trying to say. We need clarity, and we need to also not feel rushed. I don't like feeling rushed when making a decision. I represent my community. All of the members in my community, whether they consume cannabis as a medicine or not. And I think it's important that I do my due diligence as an elected official of my local community to look into all the manners and the aspects of what you folks are deciding on. And we all have a big responsibility to take part in this, and just clarity, transparency, and just let us know. And I'd like that to be rushed. Thank you.
Next after David will be Jerry Mast.
Hi, folks. I just wanted to touch base in David Scott. I'm the supervisor of the Charter Township of Commerce. I'm a retired Oakland County Sheriff's Deputy. I'm a former international police officer, having worked in Iraq, embedded with the military, trying to make life better in a place that never is going to be better. Keeping in mind, the state of Michigan has cast a referendum on our laps.
I'm here to tell all of you I inherited a community that they thought had 44 commercial grow operations operating within its borders. I'm here to tell you there are 67. 67 operations that have been rated by the DEA, the FBI, the Michigan State Police, the Oakland County Sheriff's Narcotics Enforcement Team, the South Oakland Narcotics Enforcement Team, and any other EIEIO organization that you can think of. On one day they're rated by one organization, the next morning they were allowed to reopen and function. All of these law enforcement agencies did not come forward and say, this is what we found, this is who we arrested, and this is what we confiscated. I have to send FOIA requests to find out what happened in 2011. Law enforcement does not share this information. People are arrested. They're arrested because they're violating the law. The first 44 people who came forward and said, we want to do light manufacturing in Commerce Township, which is what they considered, and it was their way to abstract it into something that would be legal. Manufacturing said, I'll never grow more than those 72 plants. I'm a caregiver. I have a list of patients, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is who I'm going to benefit. Since I've taken office in November of 16, every raid that we have done, we have never found a legal grow. 313 plants in a facility that was supposed to be for 72. 300 plants in an area that was supposed to be for 12. All of our light manufacturing, those little buildings that used to be tool and die shops that supported the automotive industry, they're full of illegal marijuana grow operations. This has been cast on us. Remember, I am a person, if I can help find a way that a child no longer has seizures, an adult no longer has Parkinson's tremors, if there's a way that I can encourage a cancer patient to nourish themselves to seek better health and cure themselves, I'm for it. This is nothing but organized crime. Take it by the horns. The 3 dispensaries that operated illegal in my area, after compelling the Oakland County Sheriff's Office to serve them with cease and desist notices, they closed. The rest of the state allows to turn a blind eye in the city of Detroit, the city of Lansing, Flint, and we could go ad nauseum with the places where this is allowed. Shut it down. Open up legal. If legal's going to be there, make it happen. But knock off the crap with all of this illegal activity, which is nothing but organized crime. Thank you for your time.
Jerry Mass. Next will be Rick Thompson.
I'm Jerry Mass. I'm the trustee for Blaine Township and Berrien County. Can you hear me now? Okay. Jerry Mass, trustee for Blaine Township, and I just had a request or a comment that there be better information coming to the townships from Laura and also from the licensing board. I feel like we have been, like the one gentleman said, we're trying to understand what some of the rules and regulations that are going to be coming out are, and it's very difficult when I've sent several emails in and I get very generic responses back. We're trying to work with the department and also work with you folks, so we want to know more information as this progresses. That was my only comment.
Thanks, we'll try to do that.
After Rick Thompson will be Jim Bedby.
Thank you very much for hearing me today. Just to make a record, there's about 250,000 patients in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program, according to MLive from the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, and we have about $20 million in our Michigan Medical Marijuana Fund. That fund is created by the registration fees and application fees paid by most of the people here in this room. This is a very large issue. We're the second largest patient population in the entire United States of America, and this process is not to be taken lightly. Communication with the 250,000 people in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program has to be better than just posting a notice on your website. I receive press releases from Laura all the time about OSHA awards, about other things too. Licensing and Regulatory Affairs has personnel that can put out press releases. They have funds available for that, and there is absolutely a demand for greater communication about the meetings, about the roadshow, about everything else that's happening, and all the steps and process. We need greater communication on the part of LARA and Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation. I would charge you with that. I would also charge you with a mandate. First and foremost, you are entitled and responsible to ensure a continuity of coverage for medical marijuana patients in the state of Michigan. Talking about interrupting their flow of medicine on a whim by Sergeant Bailey, that's dangerous. That's dangerous to the health of 250,000 people. I've been doing this for a long time. I freaked out when you said that. That is absolutely irresponsible discussion. The concept that all dispensaries, all testing laboratories, and everything else in all the patient services industry is illegal since 2013 is absolutely false. Let's take a look at what's happened since 2013 in the state of Michigan. Detroit licensed dispensaries. Flint licensed dispensaries. Those cities approved distribution centers even after your supposed Supreme Court decision that shut everything down. We have a robust testing industry which also doesn't meet the confines of your particular ideal of what legal is. If in fact the concept that all of these centers are illegal is correct, then there is an awful lot of accessories to felony things, including the Michigan State Police leader, the leader of all of the communities that endorse dispensaries, the entire City Council of Detroit, the City Council in Flint, everybody in Lansing that's currently talking about it too. To accept the fact that all of those people are violating the law is nonsensical. What makes more sense is that your opinion about dispensaries being illegal since 2013 is incorrect. And that what we've seen are individual communities taking action against individual centers only as needed, only when there's an issue. And that the vast majority of people that work within the patient services industry in Michigan right now behave respectfully, behave in conformity with their citizens, their community standards, and are allowed to continue to participate by their local leaders, including law enforcement. And to think that law enforcement is derelict in their duty is absolutely ridiculous. I hear that beeping means my time is over. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dennis Haynes is on deck. Jim?
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Beck. I'm one of the key people that got this law passed in the first place. In fact, I was the one responsible for getting the funding for the ballot initiative itself that passed. And I want to say, second, Rick Thompson, when I heard there were rumors floating around on the internet that they're going to shut all the dispensaries down, I said, no, people, that's crazy. I could not imagine it, and I'm just blown away. I'm not maybe Mr. Bailey thinks they should. He made it clear from the first meeting. But this is inconceivable. This has never been done. This is an unprecedented action. Oregon, California, every one of these states, they never shut off dispensaries that were already acting in a legal limbo. And the reason that this problem exists, if you want to go fishing, cast your net out toward the state legislature that kicked the can down the road for years and never listened and never did anything. Ladies and gentlemen, power abhors a vacuum. And that vacuum was created and it was filled by local communities, local municipalities, prosecutors, county sheriffs that decided we don't have a problem. And these dispensaries that were operated under their interpretation of the law, not yours, Mr. Bailey, that they were good citizens. They were doing all right. They were not a threat to the community. They're providing a valid, viable, serious need. And this comes across to me and most of us as petty, vindictive, and authoritarian in the worst sense of the word. But I guess you need a scapegoat so one can just defecate on dispensaries. Thank you.
Marcellus Bryce will be next. Go ahead, Dennis.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Hayes. I'm an attorney from Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor, as I'm sure you know, has several dispensaries and proudly and diligently serve probably close to 80 to 90,000 patients. And the City Council is currently passing an opt-in ordinance, and they're meeting with the zoning board tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And the point I want to make is that I disagree with the sergeant that there's a correlation between the number of patients and the number of caregivers. And I think the point has been made by Captain Kirk and others that the necessity of finding the right medication is a critical component of the treatment. And the places that people get that information, because it's not available from any public service agency, is the caregivers who service the dispensaries and service the patients. And the amount of information that you can get legally from caregivers, excuse me, from caregivers in Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, Detroit, is available nowhere else. And to suggest that somehow your interpretation of McQueen is correct is, I join the others in saying I don't believe it's correct, and I believe that the dispensaries in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti are operating within the law, and they are servicing the patients. And the real critical need that's been made by everybody, and I don't want to repeat it, is that the patients are what's important here. Not the caregivers, not the dispensaries. It's the people servicing the patients who are taking care of them, and they should be allowed to continue to do so. And I would also add that an existing dispensary operator should be allowed to apply for a state license, because they're the only ones with any literal experience.
Kathleen Graham. Marcellus.
To this honorable body, good afternoon. My name is Marcellus Bryce. I'm the owner of Alternative Care Choices. I have a few questions which might actually be answered in the working group, and then I have a comment. One of the questions that I wanted to know is that the state law has a classification as grower A, B, and C. What qualifies you for that? Will that be determined if you can have 500, 1,000, 1,500, depending upon your zoning and size of your building? I mean, that's a good question. And then the other question is determining the number of plants. State law says that you got 1,500 plants. Will that be annually, or will that be at one given time, one harvest? And then thirdly, to the question of, if this body says that any dispensary that's operating after September 5th or September 15th, how will you go by the process of determining who's operating or not? For example, I go before the Detroit City Building Zoning Authority tomorrow, where I think I will be approved. We have not opened up, and we wanted to work within the scopes of the law. But if tomorrow I am approved, which I will think, how will you determine if I tell you I didn't open? So how would you determine that? And then also, I've been hearing, everyone come up here and speak, and I think it's important to realize that under the Michigan law for caregiver, you must have a qualifying caregiver in order to dispense you medical marijuana. So if the dispensary shuts down, you still have the caregiver. So I think that's an important thing to think about also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, L-A-V-I-G-N-E. After Kathleen.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Graham, a certified hospice palliative care registered nurse. I educate about cannabis, including drug-to-drug interactions and contraindications. I'd be more than happy to present to the board if they would like further education. I currently see that there should be a minimum standard for medical marijuana patient relations staff. The need is that there is not a physician, but a provisioning center patient relations staff who talk with patients about what quantity and what chemotype of marijuana used and in what way, smoking, edibles, e-cigarette, vapor, etc., is likely best used for their qualifying medical condition. A new study, which I have for you guys and will leave for you, documents that cannabis dispensaries are not properly training workers, and staff members had often doled out incorrect advice to medical marijuana patients. Researchers found that 55% of the dispensary workers that surveyed from across 11 states received very minimal, any kind of formal training for their jobs, and only 20% had trained on the health benefits of different varieties of cannabis. The researchers also found that some recommendations were wrong or inappropriate for treating medical conditions, including 13% of workers who were recommending high THC cannabis strains to treat anxiety, and another 7% were recommending THC instead of CBD to treat epilepsy. For positive patient outcomes, the most sensitive part of the entire seed-to-sale process is the sale. When you are considering all of this, please consider the patients.
Jim Haas. Go ahead, Thomas.
Hello, Attorney Thomas Levine with Cannabis Counsel Law Firm. Yeah, I think it's important to put this in context. We're in the middle of an opiate crisis. And by diminishing patients' safe access to cannabis, we're exacerbating the opiate crisis. Now, caregivers are rated all the time for harvesting more than 15 ounces out of 72 plants, which is a total crazy scenario that we're in right now. Sure, maybe we could settle it in court if it was not usable. But the whole idea that there's plenty of marijuana and plenty of caregivers who can provide for these patients, you know, the best reflection of a caring society is how they treat their most seriously sick and frail people. So it's the most seriously ill who rely most on these dispensaries. And the most seriously ill who don't know people who grow marijuana, or, you know, sometimes their social circle is smaller. It's hard to meet people when you're wheelchair bound, for example. So all of these situations really point to the only way to protect the most seriously ill is to allow safe access as long as possible for these patients. Grandma doesn't know anybody who grows marijuana. And there's no official matching. You know, there's no way for Grandma to call up and say, how can I find a caregiver? There's no real easy way to do that. Now, toward that point, in terms of protecting the most seriously ill, I think it's important to consider allowing provisioning centers, when they get these licenses, to allow for home delivery, as long as there's seed-to-sale tracking accordingly. But some of these patients are homebound and can't get to a provisioning center, and again, won't have caregivers. So I would promote the idea of home delivery by licensed provisioning centers as well. And another thing is to allow more than one license per address or per marijuana facility is another thing that we would hope to see in the eventual rules when they come out. And, you know, one other factor is just the creation of extracts, which is more complicated. It's not as easy. It's not easy to find a caregiver in the first place, let alone a caregiver who knows how to do extracts and provide the that sort of medicine for the more seriously ill patient. So just keep this all in mind, and let's fight this opioid crisis and not drive people back to those.
Rob Lapine is next. Go ahead, Jim.
Hello, my name is James Haas. I represent Cresco Labs. We have about 200,000 square feet of operating cannabis around the United States, in Pennsylvania, 3 in Illinois, 1 in Washington, and 1 in San Juan. Just for the Michigan, I'm from Michigan, I'm from Vicksburg, but for the, as we discussed here today, our main thing that we do, and the reason why we took number 2 out of all the placements in Pennsylvania was because of our compliance. We've never had a felony or a misdemeanor in 4 years of operations. And so I kind of agree with Mr. LaMontagne with the idea that most dispensaries operating now and grow houses operating now, if they are illegal, they should be shut down. Not because of what they do for the patients. I think any illegal dispensaries should not be allowed a license going forward, and I think they should be able to operate up until that day. But going forward, the new compliance and fully legal dispensaries should be given a higher standard than the illegally operating dispensaries, because I believe if you're operating illegally now, in the future you will have a tendency to also operate illegally, and I believe what you do now indicates what you do in the future. Two other points that I had was, like the previous speaker had, is license stacking. In Illinois, in our Joliet facility, we have 7,500 plants, which it makes it very, very difficult when we do our operating and analysis of how do we deliver, like as we talked about today, how do we sell pot at a Lamborghini, Lamborghini level marijuana at a Honda price. And the only way to do that is through economies of scale. And I believe having license stacking, and maybe if we have 50 licenses for Class D grow houses or wherever that number is if as many are in one location, it's going to be easier to police. It's going to be cheaper to produce. And I believe that will drive down the cost and drive up the quality for patients. So I would just say that I've heard a lot of talk here today about having maybe a little bit looser environment, but I would argue that the strongest environment will be a highly regulated one, where applicants will have proof of funds to show that we have capital to go forward, have the track record of compliance and no felonies, and that should be weighed very, very heavily, as in the long term it will deliver better quality of cannabis to patients. Thank you.
Are you looking to try and get a place here in Michigan? Really? Really?
Remember, we're here to take input on all sides of this issue. You may not like all sides of the issue, so please keep that to yourself as well. The next person after Rob is Vincent, and I'm not sure here. It looks like CHMZZO. That person here.
Hello, my name is Rob, and I'm a medical marijuana state licensed caregiver, and I'm also a patient. I've been a patient for 10 years now. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with a rare immune deficiency disease called idiopathic thrombocytopenia platelet disease. And I was dying of the same thing. Idiopathic means they don't know how I got it, but I was dying of the exact same thing as if I had leukemia, or if I had AIDS. I had neither one, but I was dying of my platelet levels were basically depleted. And I was on 17 different medicines at one time for a year and a half. Each one of the medicines come with a side effect of suicidal thoughts and tendencies. After a year and a half of treatment, the law became law that we could use cannabis in Michigan. I went and got my license, but I was unable to grow. I didn't know how to grow, so what I did was went to a local compassion center where I was able to buy small amounts of the Rick Simpson oil. I was paying compensation of $80 per gram at that time, which is now down to between $30 and $40 for the same medicine that I was taking 10 years ago. The last they wanted to give me radiation was the last after they removed my spleen and had me on narcotics for a year and a half. After the spleen removal didn't work, my next step is radiation, and I chose to go with Rick Simpson oil, which I took 0.3 of a gram per day for the last 10 years. And if it was not for that Compassion Club in Genesee County, I would not be standing here today and talking right now. So I do appreciate those that stuck their neck out, even at risk of their own freedoms, in order to provide this medicine. And it just sends chills up my spine to think that there's going to be at least a year before, once the licenses are distributed, then you got to comply with them, then they got to set up shop, and then they're going to have to grow the medicine, which I've been doing for 10 years now. And at this particular time, I've got a 72 plant full card, but I've only got 12 plants growing because I did have an infestation myself. It's not easy. If you add into the statistics of the unsuccessful growers, you're going to find out that it's made up, I'm sure, by the illegal operations. But the people that are trying to do the right thing they're the only ones that are going to suffer if they do not have some sort of a network or a club or some sort of a provision center for possibly 6 months to a year before everybody gets their thing straight. I'd also like everybody to look up online the government patent on THC. Google that. You'll find out our U.S. Department of Health owns a patent on the Rick Simpson oil. So to say that it's a Schedule I narcotic, you're either going to have to give up your patent or you're going to have to give up. The patent comes with proof, evidence, scientific fact. You all up there at the board need to read this so that you can understand what's been going on here in the United States. The lies come out now. And when it comes out, it's like a roaring lion. So I appreciate it.
Hello, Vince Calamazzo.
Okay, Vincent, please, after Vincent gets done, we're going to take a very short 5-minute break and be right back. So go ahead, Vincent. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. I've been a licensed caregiver in the state for several years. I've always operated within the current confines of the law, which I can understand the frustrations of patients having to find people like me out there, but I've also very much enjoyed working closely with my patients and seeing them achieve the positive outcomes that so many people in this room have experienced. It's exciting to see the board, and we are happy to have you. And one of the motions that you guys suggested in the beginning, which was to have some more transparency from the municipalities who know they have someone in the pipeline that's interested in applying, I thought that was really great. So I just wanted to comment on that, because being a small guy from a rural town that's agriculturally oriented, there starts to become a concern that this very thing that we hear people complaining about all the time with government, which is that there's backdoor dealings, there's not transparency, there's stuff going into place. You see news articles, Company X has a $27 million facility that they want to bring to a town. And I think it's a good idea that you're pushing for transparency if you can find out who may have something in the works. And the only other thing I wanted to say was, when it comes time to license for growing, please expedite that, because it takes time, especially if you're trying to bootstrap these things, to set up your infrastructure, to put everything in place, to get this software in place that we need. So when it comes time to look at those licenses in December 15th, it's my hope that you can give us enough time to be ready come planting season to get everything out there and get it running. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a short 5-minute break there.